Chapter 2051. Pagoda 2. Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo decided to head to the nearest pillar to take a look before proceeding. As they approached the pillar, they realized that it was not a pillar at all. It was a huge pagoda. The pagoda looked extremely strange. It looked like a stone pillar from afar, but on closer look, it had a door at the bottom and windows in between the lines etched on it. But the windows were all tightly shut, and they couldn't see into them at all. There were many guards outside the pillars. Rather than approach them head-on, she decided to hide in a corner. "How is it?" she asked Ning Luo. "I can feel her aura getting stronger as we near the pagodas." Was little Yu Yin in these pagodas? There was no way for Yi Qingtang to check, but Ning Luo had said that all the pagodas were giving off strong auras. So she brought him to a few other pagodas to check. Just as expected, Ning Luo sensed the same aura when he approached the pagodas. She was speechless. Every pagoda contained little Yu Yin's aura. How was it possible for her to be spread over so many pagodas? Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo were both extremely puzzled. She still had no idea what the pagodas were for, so she headed back to ask Yu Qiong about it. But he had no clue either. He had already left the ancient Yu clan when the underground world was being constructed, so he also did not know what the pagodas were for. But Ning Luo still had a trick up his sleeve. He asked the soldiers around about the pagodas, and soon returned with new information. "They didn't tell me much about the pagodas, but told me not to get too close, or the clan elders would punish me," Ning Luo said. The more Yi Qingtang heard about the pagodas, the more she felt that there was something weird about them. Under the dark cover of night, she snuck out to one of the pillars. After waiting a long while, she suddenly saw Elder Yuan bringing a group of youths towards one of the pillars. She was even more stunned as she spotted a petite figure behind him. Little Luo Shui. The boy's face was blank and his eyes completely devoid of emotion as he stood behind Elder Yuan. Elder Yuan opened one of the pagoda entrances and ushered the youths in before closing the door. After that, he brought another group of them to a different pagoda and guided them in as well. She had no idea what he was doing, but little Luo Shui remained at his side the whole time. He turned to face little Luo Shui after everyone else was gone. At that moment, another ancient Yu clan elder walked over to Elder Yuan and whispered something in Elder Yuan's ear. Elder Yuan's expression turned strange as little Luo Shui, and he said something to him. Chapter 2052. Pagoda 3. Although Yi Qingtang couldn't hear what he was saying, there was no way she could get closer. But she had personally seen Ming Di and little Luo Shui battling to the death before. He was powerful enough to fight Ming Di as an equal, which meant that his strength was tremendous. Little Luo Shui stood tall. Whether it was due to Elder Yuan's words or not, he blinked and started walking towards a pagoda some distance away. Seeing that he was walking off on his own, her heart jolted. She quickly gathered Ning Luo, and they started following him in the dark. Little Luo Shui stopped in front of a pagoda. He opened the door and walked in. The pagoda was strange. Even though it looked just like the others, there were no guards outside of it. Exchanging knowing glances, Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo moved slowly towards the pagoda. They entered it easily since there were no guards around. The moment she entered, she could feel a strong power surrounding the entire pagoda. It was a familiar yet strange feeling. This feeling, she had felt it before. It was when she had accidentally stepped into the hell of Avicenaraka. She couldn't understand this feeling. There is a strong force in this pagoda. Ning Luo looked at the floating lights in the pagoda. The entire inside of the pagoda seemed to be infused with some sort of energy. Ning Luo felt an extreme sense of familiarity with the power. It was from her spiritual abode. Just as they were about to ascend the pagoda to take a better look, Ning Luo suddenly felt some movement in the power within the pagoda. He quickly grabbed Yi Qingtang and flew out of the pagoda. Little Luo Shui descended from the top of the pagoda just as they left. His gaze swept over the pagoda, but he didn't notice anything amiss. He looked blankly at the entrance of the pagoda and raised his hand, about to open the door and head outside for a look. But just as he was about to open the door, a loud, crazed shriek came from above. His expression tightened for an instant as he heard the shriek. Without a care for anything else, he quickly flew up and rushed towards the top of the pagoda. Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo could hear the screams despite having left the pagoda. What's that sound? Goosebumps appeared all over her skin as she heard the cries. They couldn't make out the gender of the person screaming at all. If anything, the scream did not even sound human. The shriek seemed to be able to pierce a person's soul and make them tremble. Look at the pagoda, Ning Luo said as he narrowed his eyes. As the shrieks echoed through the air, there was a change in the pagoda, and this soon spread to the other pagodas. The white glow slowly became red. Strong surges of power came from the pagodas. The red light was accompanied by immense power, which gradually spread from the top of the pagodas to the underground world. Soon enough, the top of the underground world was soon covered in red light, enshrouding the entire underground world in a crimson-red glow. Chapter 2053. Frightening Might. 1. The red light seared into their eyes, making it difficult for them to see. A wave of dizziness hit Yi Qingtang. Fortunately, Ning Luo was doing much better, and he dragged the pale her into the shade. Yi Qingtang grabbed her swollen head in pain. It felt as though something was sapping away all of her strength. Through the haze of her mind, she saw the doors of the huge pagodas all burst open suddenly, as the youths who had entered before this all started walking out. Their numbers were far beyond what Yi Qingtang had seen previously. Hundreds to thousands of youths walked out of each pagoda. Bathed in the red light, the youths lifted their heads as their silver eyes fixated on the top of the pagodas. She didn't see the rest as the strong feeling of dizziness sent her into a stupor as darkness claimed her. When she woke up the next day, the feeling of nausea had not completely dissipated. She sat up suddenly, not knowing when she had returned to her room. You're awake. Ning Luo was sitting on a chair by her side as he looked at her calmly. Yu Qiong, who was at her side as well, looked at her worriedly. What happened last night? How did you? Yu Qiong frowned as he couldn't stop worrying about Yi Qingtang, who was still looking pale. He had felt the aura of the underground world turn strange not long after Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo had left last night. Then not long after, Ning Luo had returned carrying an unconscious Yi Qingtang. Her face had been as pale as a sheet then, and she had been soaked in sweat. Yu Qiong had called her a few times, but she did not wake up. I'm not sure, she said as she rubbed her aching temple. The last thing she remembered was the youths exiting the pagodas. What had happened after that? It was the spiritual abode, Ning Luo said softly. What do you mean? She asked. Gaze turning towards the window, he looked at the pagodas not far from them with a strange expression. She was releasing her spiritual abode. I'm familiar with the feeling, but that was the first time you were experiencing it, so your body couldn't cope. But you can check to see if there are any changes to your body, he said as he looked at her. What did he mean by that? She checked herself again. She was stunned by what she found. Her spirit realm level had risen. In just one night, her spirit realm level had risen by a whole heaven level. This shocked her to the core. But she couldn't express this in front of Yu Qiong. After all, to him, she was the powerful Holy Lord of Shadows. Yu Qiong, go find out more about the pagodas. I have something to discuss with Ning Luo, she said. He quickly left without any suspicion toward them. She waited till he left before speaking to Ning Luo. You're saying that the red light yesterday is from little Yu Yin releasing her spiritual abode? Ning Luo nodded. You should consider yourself lucky that you were strong enough yesterday, or you would have exploded under the influence of the spiritual abode. Chapter 2054. Frightening Might. 2. Yi Qingtang's expression was complicated. She didn't doubt the seriousness of his words at all. After all, her sudden leap in strength already proved how powerful the red light was. No wonder the ancient Yu clan is gathering all their troops here. She was still unsure of the reason previously, but everything was clear now after she had experienced it herself. The spiritual abode was extremely powerful. Just the power of the white glow on the pagodas was already letting out power from the spiritual abode continuously, strengthening the ancient Yu clan. The power of the spiritual abode rose by more than 100 times when the light turned red. The streets had been empty when they had gone out previously. There was almost nobody in sight. Even the youths that were with Elder Yuan had been sent back to their respective pagodas and were not roaming outside. This power was not something that everyone could tolerate. Yi Qingtang, who already had a strong bloodline, as well as the deity Ocean, was still knocked out the first time she encountered the spiritual abode. There was no way Elder Yuan and the others would have been able to tolerate the massive power. Only the youths who had devoured the demon cubs and cultivated themselves could deal with such overwhelming power. If I'm not wrong, little Yu Yin should be in the pagoda we entered yesterday, she said. Little Yu Yin was the only one who could control the spiritual abode. She realized yesterday that the red light had originated from that pagoda. The scream that she heard before the red light was a clue as well. Ning Luo's eyes flashed as he agreed with her deduction. After so many hardships, she had finally found little Yu Yin. But there didn't seem to be any other youths in the pagoda yesterday other than little Luo Shui. She had only seen little Luo Shui enter the pagoda yesterday. The other youths had come out from the pagodas when the red light started shining, but little Luo Shui had been standing alone outside his pagoda. Ning Luo nodded. The spiritual abode did not affect him, so he had seen everything. Yi Qingtang pressed her lips together. Ning Luo and her had almost been caught yesterday. It was lucky little Luo Shui didn't recognize her now. Otherwise, she was afraid that he would attack if he noticed them. We have to find a way to enter the pagoda, she said softly. She returned to her room quickly with the news. While he no longer had his high status, Yu Qiong had several tricks up his sleeve that he had used to make himself an elder. He managed to get some clues from the ancient Yu clan people. From what I know, only youths can enter the pagodas, and they seem to be cultivating there. They go in every 3 days, and once they're inside, they will cultivate for another 3 days. When they come out, their power would have increased significantly. But there is one pagoda that no one is allowed to enter other than a little guy. Even the other youths are not allowed in, Yu Qiong reported back to her. Chapter 2055. Frightening Might 3. Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo looked at each other and pointed towards the pagoda that little Luo Shui had entered yesterday. Is that the pagoda you're talking about? Yu Qiong nodded. Yi Qingtang instantly understood everything. It seemed that Ning Luo and her deduction was correct. However, how was she going to enter to find little Yu Yin? And how was she going to make her come to her senses after finding her? No, wait. She suddenly thought of something. There would be an opportunity soon when the Crimson League attacked the ancient Yu clan. But there would only be one chance. They might move little Yu Yin elsewhere after the battle started. There were only a few more days at most before the Crimson League came to attack. She could gather more information in the meantime. Since they had almost been discovered before, she decided not to enter another pagoda with Ning Luo. It was much easier for her to move around in the underground world, since she was using Elder Mo's identity. After observing the place for 2 days, she realized that Elder Yuan would send a group of youths into the pagodas every night, and that everyone would return to their own abodes after night fell. The red light appeared every single night onwards as well, and Yi Qingtang was slowly getting used to it. And with that, her power grew in leaps and bounds. In just a few days, her power had transcended to the heavenly venerate fourth heaven. The power of little Yu Yin's spiritual abode was mind-blowing. She now understood why they had put so much importance on her spiritual abode, and why they hadn't given up on it after so many years. It was no wonder the ancient Yu clan had been able to rise so fast, and their youths had become so immensely powerful in such a short time. In fact, killing off the second domain would be easy for them if they gave the ancient Yu clan enough time. On one of the days, the ancient Yu clan inner sect leaders gathered to discuss matters. Elder Mo wasn't part of the inner sect and wasn't invited, but it seemed like they were discussing something important. Yi Qingtang contacted Ling Yan with the voice transmission stone. Ling Yan, how's the situation with me over there? Well, be there in at most half a day, so Miss Yi, you will have to calculate your time wisely. Ling Yan's smiling voice came through the voice transmission stone. This one sentence made her heart jump. So quickly? No wonder there was a sudden movement in the ancient Yu clan. Alright, I understand. I will let you know if there are any updates. Yi Qingtang cut their communication off and went to find Ning Luo. The Crimson League will be here soon. The ancient Yu clan must have found out and are preparing for a battle now. We will infiltrate the pagoda the moment they start fighting, she said. Ning Luo agreed. Her worries were quickly assuaged. Since the ancient Yu clan was preparing for a battle with the Crimson League, little Luo Shui was quickly brought out from the pagoda, since he was their main power. As little Luo Shui left the pagoda, the other youths were sent out as well. The entire army was quickly assembled, and their numbers exceeded her expectations. So the Crimson League had arrived. The battle had begun. Chapter 2056. Little Yu Yun 1. The Crimson League troops were already gathered outside the stretch of mountains. Flying beasts roamed the skies as the air filled with their roars. As the one leading the ancient Yu clan, Elder Yuan's face was as dark as charcoal when he heard the news. How did the Crimson League know where to find us? Elder Yuan's eyes flitted over the people in front of him. This question had been in his mind ever since he heard the news. Was Elder Lu captured by the Crimson League when he went hunting the demon cubs? Another elder said with a frown. Elder Lu was supposed to return with Elder Emo, but had yet to do so. This was entirely possible. No one suspected that Elder Emo was an imposter since he had Yu Qiong beside him. Not only that, Elder Yuan and Yu Qiong knew each other well, and he had confirmed Yi Qingtang's fake identity with Yu Qiong. Useless trash. Elder Yuan's face darkened further. Is the clan master back? Not yet. Elder Yuan narrowed his eyes. The underground world couldn't be attacked now. The spiritual abode couldn't land in the Crimson League's hands. Let that little guy protect the pagoda while we head to battle. Get him to leave with her through the secret passage if anything goes wrong, Elder Yuan ordered. A guard immediately went to convey his order. Little Luo Shui, who was already in the troops, turned back as he heard the order. The ancient Yu clan troops set off as he left, ready to battle the Crimson League and the Temple of Shadows. On the other side, after watching little Luo Shui leave, and confirming that the ancient Yu clan troops had set off, Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo entered the pagoda stealthily. Yu Qiong was left in his room. When Yi Qingtang entered the pagoda again, she felt the same as she did the last time. She couldn't see the ceiling at all from the first floor. Go! She started flying towards the top of the pagoda, with Ning Luo behind her. Just as they started flying towards the top of the pagoda, a small figure appeared outside. Little Luo Shui walked into the pagoda expressionlessly. The moment he entered, he sensed two auras that didn't belong. The pagoda was taller than they expected. They finally reached the top floor after flying for a long while. At the top was a huge stone door. There was a strange totem carved on it. Ning Luo suddenly stepped forward as he looked at the door and pushed it open. What they saw behind the door stunned them. There was another world behind the door. It was so vast that it didn't look like it fit into the pagoda at all. The entire space was filled with light, which looked like it was swimming before their eyes. There was a petite figure suspended in the air in the middle of all this, with colorful lights wrapped around her. Little Yu Yun. Yi Qingtang looked at the familiar figure in front of her as her heart trembled. Wasn't that little Yu Yun, whom she had been looking for such a long time? At that moment, little Yu Yun seemed to be sleeping. Her eyes were tightly shut as a huge ball of light floated in front of her head. The light seemed to fill the entire place, and spilled over endlessly to the entire underground world. Chapter 2057. Little Yu Yun 2. Little Yu Yun seemed to have become the spiritual abode carrier, and the ancient Yu clan was using her to absorb its power. Why had they left all the important members of the ancient Yu clan here? Because they had transformed this place to an endless supply of power feeding them. Yi Qingtang looked at little Yu Yun, who looked exactly like she was in her memories. But the situation in front of her made her heart ache. Beside her, Ning Luo's gaze was cold. He was staring right at his master whom he had been seeking for a long time, but the sight just made his blood boil. Humans would forever be this selfish. In the next second, Ning Luo flew up and leaped towards little Yu Yun. Boom! A loud boom rumbled through the air. A huge wave of power suddenly rippled forth from little Yu Yun, throwing Ning Luo away from her. Ignoring the intense pain coursing through his body, he looked up at the master he had looked forward to seeing for so many years. What was going on? There was no reaction from little Yu Yun at all. Her eyes remained shut, and she showed no signs of waking up. Ning Luo was about to step forward again, when she was stopped by Yi Qingtang. "Look at the light around her," she said. "What do you mean?" he asked. Little Yu Yin seems to still be in deep sleep. The light on her chest is the power of the spiritual abode. But the lights around her are the work of the ancient Yu clan. They're using the light to power their entire underground world, and it has formed a barrier around her, using the power of the spiritual abode as well. You have to find a way to destroy those lights around her if you want to save her. Ning Luo frowned and nodded. Yi Qingtang looked carefully at the threads of light around her, and realized that there were 107 of them. Excluding the pagoda they were currently in, this corresponded exactly to the number of pagodas in the underground world. Lifting her sword, she tried destroying the threads but to no avail. "It seems like we have to destroy the pagodas to destroy these lights." Her brows furrowed slightly. This was not good news at all. Even though the ancient Yu clan had already sent their best soldiers out to battle the Crimson League, there was still a small group of people guarding the underground world. It would be easy for them to sneak little Yu Yin out, but to destroy 107 pagodas under their noses, that was impossible. "Do we not have any other options?" Ning Luo's face was falling. "Give me a little more time to think." She knew that they didn't have much time, and her mind was racing, seeking a way as quickly as it could. But just as she was still pondering how to get rid of the barrier, a figure suddenly appeared behind her. "Leave this place now," a cold voice said. They turned towards the voice only to realize little Luo Shui had somehow appeared behind them. Yi Qingtang was shocked. Why was he back? She had personally seen him being brought away. He gazed at them emotionlessly as the aura around him started stirring. It would be an easy feat for him to kill them off. Chapter 2058. Little Yu Yin 3. Yi Qingtang's mind raced at this critical moment. She quickly wiped the look of surprise off her face, composed herself and said, "Leave? Have you forgotten who I am?" Her tone was solemn, and held traces of anger. Ning Luo, who was at the side, had no idea why she had suddenly changed her tone, and could only remain still. Little Luo Shui's eyes wavered as he looked at the elder in front of him. At that moment, she was still wearing Elder Mo's face. Little Luo Shui had been with the other ancient Yu clan forces before. When Yi Qingtang had gone to the ancient Yu clan valley to save the Jiang family, he had attacked them. She guessed that he would have been raised by the ancient Yu clan forces. With his power, there was no way he had not seen Elder Mo before. He looked at her for a long time as he gradually recognized her. He withdrew his aura, but continued staring at her in hostility. "You shouldn't be here." "Bullshit," she said with a scoff as her face darkened. "With the Crimson League and the Temple of Shadows at our door, this place is no longer safe. This girl holds the survival of our clan in her hands, and cannot continue staying in this dangerous place." Little Luo Shui's eyebrows furrowed slightly, as he recalled what Elder Yuan had told him. Elder Yuan had asked him to protect little Yu Yin. He had instructed him to leave this place, and seek the ancient Yu clan's grand elder if they lost. However, why were they moving little Yu Yin when the battle had just started? Did Elder Yuan have other arrangements? Little Luo Shui was still young, and with his consciousness controlled by the ancient Yu clan, he couldn't escape the shackles of the ancient Yu clan, and his thinking was extremely narrow. Furthermore, he had seen Elder Mo before. "Elder Yuan ordered me to stay here, and only leave with her if we lost," he declared. Even though he had said this, Yi Qingtang could sense doubt in his voice, which made her sigh with relief inwardly. Fortunately for them, while little Luo Shui was extremely powerful, he was still young and naive. "Elder Yuan asked you to come here not to wait for her, but to move her to someplace safe. Now that the Crimson League has discovered our location, and we still don't know who disclosed it, we cannot be sure that they won't find her. So for the sake of her safety, we must move her elsewhere immediately. It won't be too late to bring her back if we win, but nothing is worse than losing her if we are defeated." Yi Qingtang said all this with a straight face and solemn voice. She perfectly mimicked Elder Mo when he was angry. His words were completely taken in by the naive little Luo Shui. It seemed like nothing was conflicting between Elder Yuan and Elder Mo's words. "There is no room for mistakes regarding her safety," she emphasized. Little Luo Shui's eyes trembled as he heard the word safety. He gazed at the unconscious little Yu Yin. Her safety was his top priority. Yi Qingtang was still waiting for his response, when little Luo Shui suddenly flew to little Yu Yin's side and pulled her to him. But the light around little Yu Yin released its power again, pushing him away. She was speechless. Just 3 steps. What a huge difference in treatment between them. Chapter 2059. Little Yu Yin 4. Yi Qingtang remained still. She had no idea how to free little Yu Yin short of destroying all the pagodas. So she could only wait for little Luo Shui to make a move. It seemed like he knew how to deal with it. He did not react at all even as he was thrown a few steps back. He moved forward again as a strong force appeared all around him. With strong force, little Luo Shui broke right through the barrier and grabbed her wrist. In the next second, the force around little Luo Shui destroyed the light surrounding her. Yi Qingtang was speechless. Ning Luo had no words as well. Even though Divine King Luo Shui had been reborn, this amount of power was absurd. Let's go. Little Luo Shui wrapped little Yu Yin gently in his arms, as though he was holding the world's most precious pearl. Yi Qingtang quickly regained her senses. She took out a coat from her space ring and lay it over little Yu Yin. Little Luo Shui was puzzled. To prevent people from noticing her, she made up something with a straight face. Little Luo Shui didn't suspect her at all since he was completely loyal to the ancient Yu clan. Yi Qingtang suddenly felt grateful that she had brought Yu Qiong along. Without him, she would never have been able to pose as Elder Mo and trick this little kid here. Now that they had saved little Yu Yin, Ning Luo and her wasted no time at all and left the pagoda immediately. As Yi Qingtang was posing as Elder Mo, and little Luo Shui was a well-known weapon of the ancient Yu clan, no one batted an eye as they walked down the streets. She discreetly asked Ning Luo to get Yu Qiong. He rushed over just to turn pale, as he looked at the little Luo Shui beside her. The ancient Yu clan had started raising youths after he returned, and the strongest of them all was standing right in front of him. However, why was he standing beside her? Warden Xiong, now that we have started the battle, we need to move her to a safe place as soon as possible. Yi Qingtang gave him a look. Yu Qiong was extremely smart and understood her intentions at once. Yes, we will follow Elder Mo's words. The higher-ranked elders had all gone into battle to deal with the Crimson League, leaving the underground world free. Since Elder Mo's ranking was the highest there now, they could walk around freely. They were going to seize this opportunity to sneak little Yu Yin and little Luo Shui out. However, we're leaving by the secret passage, little Luo Shui said as he looked at the main door. Secret passage? Yi Qingtang and Yu Qiong looked at each other in surprise. They had no idea where it was. Nevertheless, you should walk ahead. I will observe you from the back in case anyone is following us, she said without missing a beat. Without thinking too much, little Luo Shui turned around and started walking towards the secret passage. They followed behind him. At that moment, Yi Qingtang was glad that he was so young and that he had been so thoroughly brainwashed by the ancient Yu clan. Another normal adult wouldn't have believed her. The secret passage was well hidden, and if not for little Luo Shui leading the way, they would never have found it. Chapter 2060. Grand Elder 1. Yi Qingtang thought that they would leave the underground world once they entered the underground world, but to her surprise, another palace appeared in front of her after they had walked a short while. Their footsteps wavered, and Yu Qiong's expression was dark. What's wrong? Yi Qingtang noticed his expression and asked. I have a bad feeling about this. What do you mean? Yi Qingtang asked. Over 10,000 years ago, when I was still a great elder of the ancient Yu clan, the clan master wasn't who it is now, but another one who was as famous as the domain monarch founder Jiangyu. Yu Qiong lifted his eyes to look at the carvings on the huge palace entrance. Those pictures, they belonged to him. His brows furrowed even deeper. I've heard from the other ancient Yu clan members that the Grand Elder isn't actually dead. It's just that I've never seen him in the underground world or with the ancient Yu clan. His words stunned her. Just as they were whispering to each other, little Luo Shui carried little Yu Yin into the old palace. A sudden feeling of unease rose in her heart. Her words hadn't aroused little Luo Shue's suspicions, but Elder Yuan's order was something they had not considered. It turned out he had instructed him to bring little Yu Yin to the ancient Yu clan Grand Elder, if anything went wrong. Seeing that little Luo Shui had already entered the palace, and that they had to pass through it if they wanted to leave through the secret passage, Yi Qingtang and the rest decided that they couldn't abandon them and turn back. So they had no choice but to continue onwards. She just hoped that the ancient Yu clan Grand Elder wasn't here. A strong aura of death hit them as they entered the palace. But it was completely different from the aura that the undead clan gave out. It was the stench of rot. It was dark in the main hall, but the pillars were all carved with lifelike Buddhas. The Buddhas all looked different. For some reason, the scene reminded her of the murderous Buddhas in the hell of Avicenaraka. Who is it? A low voice echoed from the center of the main hall. The lights in the main hall lit up with the voice and illuminated the whole palace. A dim figure was sitting high above them. It was the source of the voice they heard. "Greeting, Grand Elder," little Luo Shui said politely as he knelt on one knee. His words struck Yi Qingtang's heart like a bolt of lightning. What terrible luck they had. It was the ancient Yu clan Grand Elder. "What pure power," the distant voice said. He seemed to be looking at little Yu Yin, who was still in little Luo Shui's arms. "Bring her over." He stepped forward with her. Little Yu Yin's chest still glowed with faint light. As they approached the figure with little Yu Yin, Yi Qingtang and the rest finally saw what the Grand Elder looked like. It made her face instantly turn pale. The Grand Elder was nothing but a dried-up corpse. Chapter 2061. Grand Elder 2. On the seat was a dried-up corpse, his thin hands hidden in huge, expensive clothes. On his wrinkled face, a pair of empty eyes were staring straight at little Yu Yin and little Luo Shui. He gently took little Yu Yin from little Luo Shui's arms, treating her as though she was a precious pearl. How was this possible? Yu Qiong stared in disbelief at the dried corpse who was the Grand Elder. His eyes were as big as saucers. He recalled that before he had left the ancient Yu clan, the Grand Elder had still looked like a normal person. So, what exactly was going on? "It's been a long time, Yu Qiong." The Grand Elder lifted his head. He moved slowly, pulling at his dried-up skin which seemed like it was going to tear at any moment. Yu Qiong's legs jerked as he dropped to the floor, cold sweat covering his body. There was only one person in the ancient Yu clan who could make him feel this oppressed. Greetings, Clan Master." "Clan Master?" The Grand Elder shook his head and continued. "I've long handed over the clan to the next generation. It has been 10,000 years since I've seen you. You look just as you did before, but I've become like this." His eyes seemed to move over to Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo. His parched lips started moving. "Yu Qiong, you've brought me a great present." Yu Qiong was brought back to his senses. The Grand Elder suddenly raised his hands, and a gust of black wind flew towards Yi Qingtang. She leaped up as a sword appeared in her hand, and she cut the black wind in half. Little Luo Shui frowned, not understanding why the Grand Elder was attacking Elder Mo. But Yi Qingtang was clear that her disguise would not fool the ancient Yu clan patriarch. "What a familiar aura. I've felt it on an old friend before who has vanished now, but you're a little different from him." The Grand Elder lifted his head as he looked at her, like she was an interesting specimen. "What's your purpose for pretending to be a member of the ancient Yu clan? Who are you?" The Buddha sculptures on the 4 pillars started shifting with his words. In the next second they came to life. They dropped to the floor in an instant, and started attacking Yi Qingtang with their Dharma treasures held high. "I don't care who you are. Anyone who disturbs my rest has to die." The Grand Elder's hoarse voice was cold and indifferent, as though they were mere ants standing in front of him. With that, the Buddhist started attacking Yi Qingtang. Her eyes narrowed as black flames appeared on her sword. Boom! A thunderous sound exploded across the room as she swung her sword. The black flames fell from the sky all over the Buddhas, but it didn't seem to hurt them at all. "Be careful. These Buddhas are all above the holy venerate realm." Sensing that something was wrong, Ning Luo quickly flew over to her to aid in battle. These Buddhas were all above the holy venerate level, and how powerful was the Grand Elder that he could control these statues like they were his playthings. Chapter 2062. Grand Elder 3. Yi Qingtang and the rest were surrounded by the sculptures, and Grand Elder just looked at them with an expression filled with disinterest. You came earlier than expected, but it's fine. It's an opportunity for me to try out some of the strongest powers from the second domain, the Grand Elder said. He suddenly stood up, with little Yu Yin in his arms as he walked away. Follow me, Grand Elder ordered little Luo Shui. Little Luo Shui's expression was a little off initially. Then his eyes met with Grand Elder's eyes that glinted with red light. All his emotions just dissipated once she saw the red light. His eyes lost focus, and he was almost soulless, just following behind the Grand Elder. On the other hand, Yi Qingtang was dealing with the sculptures. When she saw the Grand Elder leaving with little Luo Shui and little Yu Yin, she instantly had a bad feeling. Ning Luo seemed to also have sensed the risk. He suddenly transformed into a sword. Use me. Ning Luo had transformed into the Ice Frost Divine Sword that was now in Yi Qingtang's hand. Yi Qingtang's eyes were filled with determination as she held the Ice Frost Divine Sword firmly, waving it in one swift motion. The seemingly indestructible sculpture collapsed once the Ice Frost Divine Sword struck it. As Yi Qingtang started destroying the sculptures, they had all become shattered rocks. She couldn't be bothered with anything else, and quickly chased after Grand Elder. Be careful, Holy Lord. Yu Qiong regained his senses and warned her. I don't know what the Grand Elder plans to do, but judging from his appearance, I don't think he will be able to last in that body for long. That boy seems to be extraordinary. I'm guessing that the Grand Elder plans to overtake, Yu Qiong said. He had been working under the Grand Elder for many years, and naturally knew the Grand Elder's personality more than anyone else. Yu Qiong had already sensed something weird when the Grand Elder didn't appear previously, but now, he could already guess what was going to happen. The ancient Yu clan had been under the Jiang family's oppression when the domain monarch founder, Jiang Yu, was in power. The Grand Elder held the position of master back then, and was very indignant about it. He made use of the ancient Yu clan's power to search for quite a number of forbidden skills. With Yu Qiong's understanding of the Grand Elder only landed in this predicament because he took the risk and performed the forbidden skills. This must be the reason why he handed the position of master to someone else and remained hidden here. It turned out he was making use of the spiritual abode's powers to nourish his spirit root and search for a body that was powerful enough. Little Luo Shui must have been included in the Grand Elder's plans. It was only brought forward a day earlier because of the Crimson League's affairs. When she heard Yu Qiong's words, Yi Qingtang became even more worried, and she didn't dare waste a single second. She chased after them at the fastest speed possible. On the other hand, the Grand Elder took little Yu Yin and little Luo Shui to the underground altar. He had prepared for this for many years. Lie down there. Grand Elder left behind some red pigment between little Luo Shui's brows, using his sharp fingernail. Little Luo Shui was expressionless as he lay on the altar, lacking any focus in his eyes. The Grand Elder watched little Luo Shui, who was completely under his control, before riveting his eyes on little Yu Yin, who was asleep in his arms, before he took a deep breath. When he took in a deep breath, the aura surrounding little Yu Yin seemed to have been taken away from her. It was taken in by Grand Elder. Chapter 2063. Possession 1. The Grand Elder's skin started plumping up rapidly as his eyes glowed red. He looked extremely unusual. Then in the blink of an eye, his body had returned to its normal, terrifying self. And with that, his gaze turned to little Luo Shui, who was lying on the altar. Yi Qingtang rushed as quickly as she could over to them, only to see the Grand Elder opening his mouth wide, as a dark aura flowed from his mouth continuously into little Luo Shui's forehead. He wants to possess him. Yu Qiong was shocked to see this. If the Grand Elder managed to possess him successfully, little Luo Shui's power would belong to him, and there would be nothing else they could do. As he worried, Yi Qingtang flew up into the air. A cold light illuminated her ice sword as she swung it directly towards the Grand Elder. The Grand Elder, who was busy trying to possess little Luo Shui, hadn't expected them to defeat the stone Buddhas so quickly. The cold light completely severed the connection between the Grand Elder and little Luo Shui. Boom! The possession was stopped by force, and the Grand Elder seemed to have taken a huge blow. He took a few steps back as fresh blood spurted from his mouth. Scoundrel! The pathetic-looking Grand Elder's eye glowed red. He had almost taken the little boy's body as his. The Buddha statues had been made with little Yu Yun's spiritual abode, and were extremely powerful in the central mainland. How were they destroyed this quickly? He never would have thought that Yi Qingtang had used the sword that the extraordinary lady had given her to destroy the Buddhas. The Ice Frost Divine Sword had followed the extraordinary lady her whole life, and was imbued with the strong spiritual abode. It was the only weapon in the central mainland that could destroy the Buddha statues. Who are you? Why are you fighting against the ancient Yu clan? The Grand Elder gritted his teeth and glared at Yi Qingtang as he held his throbbing chest. She didn't speak. Seeing that the Grand Elder was injured, she raised her hand to follow up with another blow. A red light suddenly appeared in the Grand Elder's hand, and her disguise broke under the red light. Yi Qingtang's beautiful face was revealed to the Grand Elder. With just a glance, the Grand Elder stood rooted to the ground. Holy Lord of Shadows, it's you. The Grand Elder's eyes widened in surprise. He had never imagined that the person impersonating Elder Mo would be the Holy Lord of Shadows herself. Seeing that her disguise had been broken, and the Grand Elder staring terrified at her, she composed herself and took advantage of the situation. It's been a long time since we've last met, Yi Qingtang said. The Grand Elder's face was extremely dark. No wonder you could defeat the statues. Yi Qingtang's face was completely devoid of emotion, but she knew the truth about the situation. The only reason they had defeated the statues was because of Ning Luo's swordplay. She could feel that the Grand Elder's will had weakened, probably because the person standing in front of him was the Holy Lord of Shadows. He knew that there was no way he could win in this situation. After all, the Holy Lord of Shadows was the most powerful person in the central mainland. The only reason the Grand Elder wanted to possess little Luo Shui's body was so that he could become even stronger. He had also previously received reports that little Luo Shui and Ming Di had been fighting as equals. Chapter 2064. Possession 2. Ming Di was as powerful as the Holy Lord of Shadows, which was what made the Grand Elder want to possess little Luo Shui's body so much. In his current state, how could he be a match for the Holy Lord of Shadows? Holy Lord of Shadows, you must have infiltrated the ancient Yu clan for her? The Grand Elder narrowed his eyes and pointed towards little Yu Yin. Yi Qingtang raised her eyebrows gently without replying, silently confirming what he had said. Her silent confirmation gave him some hope. This little girl's spiritual abode is indeed very powerful. Holy Lord, you may have an interest in it, but won't be able to understand how to use it fully in such a short while, the Grand Elder said after weighing his options. The ancient Yu clan has been studying the spiritual abode for tens of thousands of years, and we understand it well. If the Holy Lord is willing, we can cooperate. After all, the central mainland is just in the first domain. You were originally from the second domain, and must know how vast the place is. Why would you want to stay here? The Grand Elder spoke cautiously. He had been too overconfident previously, thinking that nothing would go wrong since no one would enter the underground world, and Buddha statues were guarding him. Who would have thought that he would meet with someone unexpected? Since he was alone here, he had to cooperate with Yi Qingtang if he wanted to live. HM, you want to work with me? She looked at the Grand Elder lightly. It's only natural for the strong to form an alliance. Isn't the same with the Temple of Shadows and the Crimson League? But, the Grand Elder paused before continuing. The Crimson League doesn't seem to value the Temple of Shadows much. When you vanished, they removed the Temple of Shadows from their alliance. You probably won't be able to regain your old standing even if you return to the Crimson League now. But I'm different, the Grand Elder said as he looked at her. The ancient Yu clan and the Temple of Shadows are of about the same strength, and we're both from the first domain. If we join hands, we would be able to defeat the second domain in a day. After all, we have the spiritual abode, as well as the spirit of chaos. Half of the Spirit of Chaos fragments were with the ancient Yu clan while the other half was with the Temple of Shadows. Yi Qingtang couldn't help but admire how thick the Grand Elder's skin was as she listened to him. He really was a sly fox that had lived for tens of thousands of years. To be able to play with someone's heart so easily. "Why would I want to work with you?" she said with a cold laugh as her gaze swept lightly over him. "You're my enemy after all. As long as you're dead, the girl and the Spirit of Chaos will fall into my hands." The Grand Elder's face darkened as he grabbed little Yu Yun's neck and said, "You're right. I'm no match for you, but I have more than enough strength to kill her. If I die, I'm taking her to the grave with me, and you will lose the spiritual abode." Yi Qingtang looked at him expressionlessly. "Prove your sincerity if you want to work with me." The Grand Elder's heart shook as he quickly said, "Can I use the Spirit of Chaos fragments to show my sincerity?" He had heard from the ancient Yu clan members that the Crimson League was after the Spirit of Chaos fragments. If they managed to get the fragments, the Crimson League would not even be a match for them. Chapter 2065, Possession 3. The ancient Yu clan was most concerned about little Yu Yun's spiritual abode. So long as the spiritual abode remained, the ancient Yu clan could continue strengthening their powers. As for the Spirit of Chaos, they could do without it for now. A faint smile appeared on Yi Qingtang's lips. "All right. As long as you hand over the remaining Spirit of Chaos fragments to me, I'll let you off. When I finish rebuilding the Spirit of Chaos, we can exchange the powers for cultivation." Grand Elder's eyes crinkled into a smile. The suggestion she made was satisfactory. Even if the Temple of Shadows had their hands on the fragments of the Spirit of Chaos, the Crimson League would never sit back and allow that to happen. Grand Elder was merely redirecting trouble to the Temple of Shadows. The Crimson League's target would then shift from the ancient Yu clan to the Temple of Shadows. Grand Elder thought that his plan was secret and foolproof. Unbeknown to him, Ning Luo, who was in a sword form, was watching him negotiate with Yi Qingtang, and was simply at a loss for words. What kind of trauma did the Holy Lord of Shadows cause for him? Why was he this afraid? Even if the Grand Elder was badly injured, Yi Qingtang wouldn't be able to beat him. However, to think he was fooled by Yi Qingtang. "I'll let you know of the whereabouts of the fragments of the Spirit of Chaos as a form of sincerity," Grand Elder said smilingly. Yi Qingtang raised her brows while listening to the hiding spot of the fragments of the Spirit of Chaos, but she didn't make a move. "I'm the only one who knows about the location. Not a single person from the ancient Yu clan knows about the spot." "Holy Lord, you are now the second person to know," the Grand Elder said. "I'm supposed to believe you when you just randomly told me this mysterious location? What if you just escape like that?" Yi Qingtang continued. "What do you mean?" "I want the boy behind you." Yi Qingtang raised her hand, pointing at little Luo Shui, who was on the altar. "You seem invested in his body. I have no interest in him. I will need to make sure the fragments are at the location, then I'll let him go." Grand Elder's eyes narrowed, and after some thinking he nodded. He took little Yu Yin to a side, and Yi Qingtang put down the Ice Frost Divine Sword before lifting little Luo Shui up. Given that the Holy Lord of Shadows was powerful enough, and had no use of little Luo Shui's body, so Grand Elder wasn't worried. As Yi Qingtang looked at little Luo Shui, who had a blank expression while in her arms, she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she managed to save one of the two. As for little Yu Yin, Yi Qingtang looked at Grand Elder. He should be prepared for his death. Yi Qingtang wasted no time, and took Yu Qiong with her to the location that Grand Elder had told them about. Grand Elders revealed a grim expression only after Yi Qingtang left. There wasn't any problem with the location he had named. However, he wasn't that foolish to just wait for her, without doing anything. Even without little Luo Shui, as long as he had the spiritual abode, he could continue cultivating more outstanding vessels. Grand Elder prepared to take little Yu Yun with him to leave via the secret passage. But he had completely neglected the Ice Frost Divine Sword that had been left behind by Yi Qingtang. When Grand Elder took little Yu Yun with him, and prepared to leave, the Ice Frost Divine Sword suddenly had an outburst of light. The Grand Elder had sustained injuries, and since the Ice Frost Divine Sword had a similar breath as little Yu Yun, he didn't notice a thing. Only for an instant. The Ice Frost Divine Sword went through the Grand Elder's chest from his back. The Grand Elder's eyes widened as he looked at the sword that was peeking out of his chest. Shock finally registered across his features. How had he fallen so easily into this trap? Chapter 2066, Complete Victory 1. How could this be? Yi Qingtang had already left. How could the sword even? The Grand Elder spat blood and collapsed on the ground. With that, the Ice Frost Divine Sword transformed, turning into Ning Luo's human form, and he snatched little Yu Yun away. Wasting no time, he flew out of the place at the fastest speed possible. The Grand Elder was powerful, but he had already sustained some injuries, and coupled with the sword's attack, he couldn't help but collapse on the ground. His eyes were filled with hatred. The Holy Lord of Shadows. That was a good move. He hadn't expected the Holy Lord of Shadows to be this powerful. Even her sword had a consciousness of its own. Nevertheless, the Holy Lord of Shadows. The last one standing might now be you. You would never be able to anticipate my last card. Grand Elder, who had once been the one to control the entirety of the central mainland, took his last breath before dying. His body was originally filled with powers from the spiritual abode. Within seconds, he lost the very last remnants of his energy, and his corpse quickly turned into ash and vanished. Ning Luo took little Yu Yin with him, and flew away to look for Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang realized that the Grand Elder didn't lie. The spirit of chaos fragments were indeed hidden at the spot he named. However, Yi Qingtang wasn't in a rush to take them away. She only relaxed when she saw Ning Luo bring little Yu Yun back. Ning Luo quietly observed Yi Qingtang. He already felt that this young lady was very different from others back in the first mainland, but she had grown so much now. He wouldn't have been capable of coming up with such an idea to save little Yu Yun and little Luo Shui, until Yi Qingtang left him behind at the altar and hinted for him to take action. It was only then that he realized she was a sly one. Ning Luo, leave this place with Yu Qiong and the children, Yi Qingtang instructed. What about you, Holy Lord? Yu Qiong asked worriedly. The ancient Yu clan and Crimson League are still fighting outside. How can I miss the fight? Yi Qingtang smiled. Of course she must join this battle. Without uttering a word, Yu Qiong took Ning Luo and the unconscious children with him, leaving through the secret passage. Yi Qingtang also flew out. Outside the underground world, among the stretch of mountains, the ancient Yu clan, Crimson League and Temple of Shadows were engaged in a fierce battle. Corpses were laying everywhere. The ground was almost completely red from the blood flowing everywhere. Yi Qingtang could see Ming Di in a fierce battle from far away. His murderous self was completely unleashed. The ancient Yu clan was no match for the Crimson League. They were at a disadvantage from the beginning. One of the three elders had died in the battle. The entire ancient Yu clan was almost destroyed. Yi Qingtang flew onto Ming Di's back. Ming Di was about to breathe hot air at her. But when he turned around and saw that it was Yi Qingtang, he was stunned. Continue. Yi Qingtang showed a gentle smile. Ming Di regained his senses, charging towards the ancient Yu clan's army. The ancient Yu clan was already at a disadvantage, and when they saw Yi Qingtang appear on Ming Di's back, they were startled. Retreat! Don't stay here. As long as we have the spiritual abode, we can always make a comeback. An elder ordered once he noticed that things weren't in their favor. Elder Yuan was also prepared. He sent someone to the underground world to inform little Luo Shui to look for the Grand Elder with little Yu Yun. They would not be defeated. Chapter 2067, Complete Victory 2. The Grand Elder should have received the news and taken the children with him. Since he had yet to return, Elder Yuan and the others guessed that he went to look for help. The ancient Yu clan had sustained great injuries. It was no surprise that the entire ancient Yu clan wanted to retreat and tried to pull out of the battle. When Ming Di saw that they were about to escape, there was no way he would ever grant their wish. He wanted to chase after them, but Yi Qingtang stopped him from doing so. Following the ancient Yu clan's escape, the clans let out raucous cheers of victory. At the same time, Yi Qingting rode on Mingdi's back to look for me. Before she got off Mingdi's back, she realized a handsome man was standing beside me. The man stood right beside me and didn't have much of an expression on his face. Yi Qingting was shocked that me wasn't hostile towards the man, and instead was very welcoming. Who was he? She hadn't seen him before. Yi Qingting brushed it aside and spoke to me. The ancient Yu clan has been defeated. I'm not sure if they took the fragments of the spirit of chaos. We need to hurry up and go back to the underground world to look for the fragments. Me nodded and discreetly watched the man's reaction. After seeing that the man wasn't interested in the fragments of the spirit of chaos, me didn't say anything more. May I know who this is? Yi Qingting looked at the man. Me was about to speak up, but noticed the man was startled when he saw Yi Qingting. Me couldn't help but feel suspicious, but nevertheless continued. This is my friend from the second domain. He had some matters to take care of in the first domain, so he came by to visit me. Yi Qingting didn't think too much after hearing Ms. words, but she couldn't help but feel a little curious. The Crimson League seemed indifferent towards humans, but now, me had good relations with this human. Moreover, Yi Qingting could somehow sense that me respected this man. Regardless, Yi Qingting wasn't planning to be involved in the second domain's affairs. She had already brought little 5 Yu Yin back. As long as little Yu Yin regained consciousness, she would set the first mainland's living creatures free. With that, Yi Qingting let the Crimson League enter the underground world to search for the fragments of the spirit of chaos, so that she could prove her innocence. The Crimson League found many rare treasures that the ancient Yu clan had collected over the years, but they couldn't find even a single piece of the fragments of the spirit of chaos. The ancient Yu clan might have taken it away while they were escaping, but don't worry. They will never be able to escape from this mainland. Yi Qingting comforted them, but she wasn't surprised at the outcome at all. The Crimson League hadn't discovered the secret passage yet. The Grand Elder was dead and only Ning Luo, Yu Qiong, and herself knew of the whereabouts of the fragments of the spirit of chaos. Ning Luo wasn't interested in them while Yu Qiong had already pledged loyalty to Yi Qingting. It was impossible for the Crimson League to be able to find the fragments of the spirit of chaos, unless Yi Qingting spoke up. They were victorious and returned in triumph. The Crimson League and the others returned to the Temple of Shadows. Yi Qingting went to look for Yu Qiong and Ning Luo once she stepped foot into the Temple of Shadows. Ling Yan was also in the room. How are they doing? Yi Qingting looked at little Yu Yin and little Luo Shui, who both lay on the bed. Little Yu Yin was unconscious, while little Luo Shui had a blank expression. Not so good. The ancient Yu clan must have cast a special spell on them, and were not able to remove it just like that. We can only try to observe and deal with it gradually, Ning Luo said. Yi Qingting frowned. At least they were back and thankfully they still had time. Chapter 2068. Complete Victory 3. Yu Qiong, don't leave your room for the time being. There will be trouble if the Crimson League sees you, Yi Qingting told him. The injuries on his face had already more or less healed, and he would be recognized by me and the others in an instant if he went out. Yu Qiong nodded. With Ning Luo protecting them, she could rest assured for little Yu Yin and little Luo as well. She headed back to her room and called Ling Yin in. The little white tiger, who had been left abandoned in the room, quickly jumped up as it saw Yi Qingting. But when it crawled back to where it was after seeing Ling Yin behind her, damn him, he was here again. Miss Yi, you look like you have something to tell me? Ling Yin asked her with a smile. That's right. The Crimson League wasn't able to find the spirit of chaos fragments with the ancient Yu clan this time. Do you know anything about that? She asked. Ling Yin nodded as he looked at her with eyes full of laughter. Miss Yi must have found what the Crimson League didn't manage to find. Yi Qingting was speechless. It wasn't fun at all talking to such a smart person. Miss Yi, you don't want to hand over the spirit of chaos fragments so quickly since you're afraid that the Crimson League will leave once they have obtained all the fragments and recast the spirit of chaos. There would be a terrible battle if the ancient Yu clan were to regain their strength. Ling Yin pointed out all the calculations that she had made. In response, she shrugged and said, You're right. Since the ancient Yu clan hasn't completely been eradicated, I will make use of the Crimson League. At this stage, she had yet to decide whether she wanted to hand over the fragments, but seeing the way things were going, she was only going to hand the fragments over after the ancient Yu clan was completely wiped out. When that time came, she would hand over the fragments to the Crimson League, and they would leave, which meant she could finally heave a sigh of relief. After discussing with Yi Qingtang about a few other things, Ling Yan left. But he didn't return straight to his room. He went to Ning Luo's room first. As Yu Qiong stayed next door, only Ning Luo and the two children were in the room. Ning Luo wasn't surprised at all to see Ling Yan, but prepared himself. "Why did you need to come and see me? Haven't I already kept my promise to you?" Ling Yan smiled as his eyes moved to little Yu Yin, who was on the bed. Ning Luo's gaze remained guarded. "I've already told you all that you want to know, but..." He froze as he saw Ling Yan's gaze turn complicated. "Ling Yan, what exactly do you want? I've noticed ever since we were in the first mainland that you've always been helping her. But your actions now are making me suspicious. Why do you need me for this? Just what is it you are planning?" Ling Yan smiled slightly as he lowered his eyes. "When have my intentions ever changed? Since I've already fulfilled your wish for you, you don't need to worry about the rest." A bark of cold laughter erupted from Ning Luo. "If not for my master, I would never have worked with someone like you." Ling Yan shrugged slightly, not bothered at all by his remarks. They exchanged a few other words in a low voice before Ling Yan turned to leave. Ning Luo suddenly spoke up as they reached the door. "Ling Yan." "Yes." Ning Luo fell back into silence. Regardless, Ling Yan seemed to know what he wanted to say, but chose not to reply. He pushed open the door and left. Chapter 2069. Strange 1. Yi Qingtang was still thinking of ways to wake little Yu Yin and little Luo Shui, but nothing was working. According to Ning Luo, the only way to break them out of the ancient Yu clan's control was to kill the one controlling them, Elder Yuan. But he had escaped after the previous battle. At this moment she had no idea where to find the ancient Yu clan after they had escaped. The only way to completely eradicate them was to borrow the Crimson League's power. Originally she had planned to use the Spirit of Chaos fragments as an excuse when talking to me. But there were some things that she had to smooth out first. In the past few days, Yi Qingtang and Ning Luo had both been by little Yu Yin's side. The little white tiger had followed her to do so as well, but noticed that her gaze had become strange over the past few days. "Have you realized that your cultivation level has been increasing rapidly?" Yi Qingtang was speechless. How had she not noticed? Ever since returning from the underground world, her power had been growing rapidly. Perhaps, was this all due to little Yu Yin's spiritual abode? The more she understood the power of the spiritual abode, the more she was sure that if little Yu Yin's identity was exposed, it would create a lot of trouble. Even the Crimson League may take action. Because of this, she could only hide little Yu Yin. Even the Temple of Shadows didn't know that she had brought back 2 children. In the short span of a few days, Yi Qingtang's cultivation level had risen by a few levels, and she had reached the 7th Holy Venerate level. She was extremely happy with the rise in her power. She sensed that the reason she could absorb the power so quickly, without the fear of combusting, was due to the deity ocean within her. Every time little Yu Yin's spiritual abode pumped power into her body, the deity ocean would release a wave of power as well, integrating the power into her body. With her current power, there was no one more powerful than her in the central mainland save for those youths who had received power from the spiritual abode and ate the flesh of the demon cubs. After a few days of strategizing, Yi Qingtang prepared to talk to me about her plan to eradicate the ancient Yu clan. But just as she entered the main hall, she saw a long shadow stretched out in front of her. In front of her was the mysterious boy who had appeared beside me the other day. He seemed to have followed the Crimson League to the Temple of Shadows. Although she had tried probing me a few times about his identity, me had never revealed anything about him, which made her all the more curious. She looked at him and nodded slightly, preparing to leave, but as they brushed past each other, he suddenly raised his hands to stop her. "Do you need me for something?" She stopped in her tracks and looked at him. His gaze swept past her face, as though he was thinking of something. It would have been impossible for her not to sense something strange in his gaze. "I wonder if the Holy Lord is free today," he asked flatly. "I've heard great things about you, and I hope you can give me some advice." Yi Qingtang was speechless. What was going on? Chapter 2070. Strange, too. Yi Qingtang looked at the man in front of her in bewilderment. He wanted to challenge her. Yi Qingtang was speechless. She didn't even know who he was. This was their first time interacting, and their first proper introduction. Was it going to be a challenge? Yi Qingtang simply couldn't comprehend what was going on in his head. "Since you're Mi's friend, you're a guest at the Temple of Shadows. I don't have any reason to fight with you," Yi Qingtang replied coldly. What kind of joke was this? Judging from how Mi treated him the previous time, she could already tell that he was a force to be reckoned with. Even Yi Qingtang couldn't tell what level he was at with her current powers. He must be much more powerful than her. Though Yi Qingtang had remarkable improvements recently, she wasn't daring enough to fight with a strong power from the second domain. The man was slightly dissatisfied when faced with her rejection, and it showed in how he knitted his brows. Yi Qingtang didn't want to continue entertaining him. Wasn't this too strange? Who on earth would approach someone for a challenge as an introduction? Wasting no time, she moved to leave, but just as she stepped forward, she felt a gust of chilly air from behind. It was overbearing, even more so than Yi Qingtang was alarmed. Whoosh! She instantly dodged. Right when Yi Qingtang flew up, a beam of light flashed past the spot she originally stood at and pierced through the wall in the Temple of Shadows. Boom! A huge crack appeared in the wall. Yi Qingtang was speechless. The walls in the Temple of Shadows were built with special materials. It would take at least 3 days of continuous bombing by tens of holy venerates to cause a crack in the wall. This man did that with a single move. Being shocked was an understatement. "Holy Lord, please don't be humble. This is a rare opportunity. Why won't you just take up the challenge?" The man was devoid of emotion, and the moment he said that, he struck another move towards Yi Qingtang. This speed was inhuman. He was so quick that Yi Qingtang couldn't see anything. Yi Qingtang couldn't even keep track of his shadow. She suddenly felt a twinge in her shoulder and flew away from the impact, spitting a mouthful of blood. He was so powerful, even more powerful than anyone she had ever met. Yi Qingtang could only suffer and broke out into a cold sweat. It seemed like he wasn't going to make any further move. He merely looked at Yi Qingtang with his brows furrowed and with a complicated expression. Yi Qingtang was stunned. She had improved, but she was nowhere as good as the real Holy Lord of Shadows. This man could tell. Yi Qingtang couldn't help but feel uneasy when she recalled that the man was friends with me. Before Yi Qingtang could do anything, the man left without a word. After stepping out of the temple, he simply vanished. Like that, Yi Qingtang was left behind, feeling confused. This man, what did he want? He wanted to challenge her, but just left after striking one move? Were strong beings from the second domain all strange like that? Although she had no idea what his motive was, she could not allow herself to let her guard down. Cleaning up after the impromptu confrontation, she went to look for me. Chapter 2071. Strange 3. Mi had no idea about what had just happened. He thought that it was weird when Yi Qingtang told him that the man had left, but did not say anything else. Yi Qingtang heaved a sigh of relief when she saw his reaction. It seemed as though he had really left without saying anything to me. She could vaguely tell from Mi's words that he wasn't from the Crimson League and was from another force. Although she wanted to ask him for more information, Mi seemed to have no intention of saying more. "I always get the feeling that he's very strange, and that his powers are greater than me," she said as she sat on a chair looking at Ling Yan. "Who do you think would win between Ming Di and me?" Ling Yan asked as he looked at her. "Ming Di is probably still slightly stronger," she said after mentally comparing the both of them. Mi's power was astonishing while Ming Di's was overwhelming. Between the two of them, Ming Di still won by a little. Legend has said that Ming Di could fight with the Holy Lord of Shadows as equals, Ling Yan said. Yi Qingtang frowned slightly. With that man's strength, even if he couldn't defeat the Holy Lord of Shadows, he wouldn't be far off. Did he just want to test her power? I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint him then, she said with a shrug. She was probably considered one of the strongest in the first domain, right now, but was nothing in the second domain. Ling Yan laughed lightly and said, Miss Yi, you should stop worrying since he's already left. In my opinion, he's not going to tell this to the Crimson League. Perhaps he doesn't even have them in his considerations. I'm not worried that he'll inform the Crimson League. I can tell that even though me and he know each other, they're not that close, and there's no point in talking about me either. It's just that I sensed something strange in his gaze towards me. Her lips twisted softly, not understanding the man's actions. Miss Yi, you don't have to worry about all of this. Shouldn't you think about how to deal with the ancient Yu clan? Ling Yan suddenly changed the topic. Yi Qingtang looked at him, sensing a different meaning behind his words. The ancient Yu clan? Ling Yan nodded. You've already gotten little Yu Yin back, which means that they would have found out about the loss of the spiritual abode already. Their plans to recast the spirit of chaos have also been dashed. They've suffered huge losses, which means that they will be seeking their revenge soon. The ambition of the ancient Yu clan extended beyond the first domain, and the strongest chip they had was little Yu Yin, who could generate countless powerful youths. For them, getting the spirit of chaos would only add to their power. Even if they couldn't obtain it, it would only stop them temporarily. But losing little Yu Yin was a huge blow to them. They had lost many powerful youths in the previous battle. They wouldn't be able to make more powerful members without the spiritual abode. The reality was as Ling Yan had said. The ancient Yu clan had lost the previous battle and retreated to their last stronghold. Not only had they lost the entire underground world, but they had also lost a clan elder that was extremely important to them. At that moment, the ancient Yu clan elders were gathered at the main hall. The clan master who just entered the main hall had a dark expression as he stared down at them. I only left for a while. Look at how badly all of you handled this. He spat out with narrowed eyes. Chapter 2072. Counter 1. All of the elder had grim expressions as well. Any news of the Grand Elder? The clan master asked coldly. As the clan elders looked at each other, their expressions, if possible, became even more solemn. Clan master, the Grand Elder was no longer there when we went to the old palace. One of them said. Not here. What do you mean? The clan master's expression was cold. Clan master, we entered the secret passage after the Crimson League left, but found signs that there were already people there. The Buddha statues guarding the place had all been destroyed as well, and it seemed that the Grand Elder had already been killed. Ridiculous. The clan master instantly smashed the head of the elder who spoke up. Fresh blood splattered all over his head. The whole hall fell silent. Where is the girl? He asked coldly. No one dared to reply to him in his anger, afraid that they would be the next victim. But their silence gave him his answer. Great, great, great. He burst out in laughter and shouted out 3 words. I guess both the Temple of Shadows and the Crimson League really do want to destroy us. The clan master's face was completely frosty now. The clan elders had ruined their plans of collecting all the spirit of chaos fragments, but now, even little Yu Yin had been taken away. This had destroyed all their plans. Clan master, should we recuperate first, then wait for the Crimson League to leave? Another person suggested. As it stood, they were no match for the Crimson League now since their power was way beyond their league. And with the loss of little Yu Yin, they were in deep trouble. They had no choice but to wait for the Crimson League to leave. Recuperate. The clan master let out another bark of cold laughter, and continued. The ancient Yu clan has been planning this for years. How did they ruin our plans? Clan master, you mean? The clan master took a deep breath and closed his eyes gently. Where do you think I have been all this time? No one knew what he meant. I went to the second domain. Everyone froze at these words. The clan master had gone to the second domain? The Temple of Shadows borrowed power from the second domain to ruin our plans. So why can't I do the same? The clan master looked at all of them. We are not the only ones who want the spirit of chaos. Many forces in the second domain want it as well. The Crimson League is from the second domain, but there are many forces like them as well. We can't possibly let the Temple of Shadows go so easily now that they've ruined our plans for the spirit of chaos. No? The clan master said as his lips curved up into a cold smile. There was no way he was going to let them have what he couldn't obtain. I've discussed with the forces of the second domain. As long as they help us clear our enemies in the central mainland, I will give them the spirit of chaos fragments after we win. Although he had still been hesitating about making this decision, the loss of little Yu Yun was the last straw. He wanted the Temple of Shadows and the Crimson League to pay in blood for what they had done. The ancient Yu clan members who had been worrying all looked happier as they heard this. Clan Master, if we can borrow the might of the second domain, the Crimson League is nothing that we would fear. They only sent over a few people. As long as we can get more help, we don't have to fear the Crimson League or the Temple of Shadows. Chapter 2073 Counter 2, Elder Yuan. The clan master lifted his eyes to look at Elder Yuan, who was standing silently to one side. Yes, he said. Those two kids are under your control. Can you tell where they are? The clan master asked. He had to get little Yu Yin. The spirit of chaos could be let go of, but the spiritual abode couldn't belong to anyone else. I can vaguely sense that they're in the direction of the Temple of Shadows, but it'll need to get closer to narrow down the actual location. The clan master nodded slightly. All right, well, attack the Temple of Shadows directly. You'll be in charge of finding the children after that. He paused for a moment before continuing. Elder Yuan, you had better not disappoint me this time. A bead of cold sweat ran down Elder Yuan's forehead as he nodded. The Temple of Shadows and the Central Mainland had sent more people to the Central Mainland to look for the ancient Yu clan. But it was as though they had vanished from the entire mainland. There was no trace of them at all. Yi Qingtang continued to keep the information about the spirit of chaos to herself, which only made the Crimson League search for the ancient Yu clan even more frantically. From what I can see, the ancient Yu clan are already too scared to even show their face. So Holy Lord, you don't have to be too worried. The 8 tribe leaders were gathered in the main hall. They didn't think that the ancient Yu clan could cause any more trouble. As long as the Crimson League was still on the central mainland, the ancient Yu clan wouldn't show their faces. The 8 tribe leaders were more worried about rejoining the Crimson League. Holy Lord, since we've already rejoined the Crimson League, should we consider returning to the second domain after all of this is over? The demon tribe leader said eagerly. The 8 tribe leaders' strength was based on the amount of faith people had in them. When they were in the second domain, their powers made them have a huge following, which made them even stronger. But the faith they received had faded when they went to the first domain. The Temple of Shadows had been strong in the central mainland, and they had received a lot of faith, which had sustained their power. But with the disappearance of the Holy Lord of Shadows and the desolation of the Temple of Shadows, they had lost much of their power, and were now not even 1/10 of their previous strength. In their heyday when they were still in the second domain, just one stomp of their foot would be enough to make the first domain shake 3 times. How far they had fallen. Yi Qingtang knew their intentions well, and had several thoughts about going to the second domain as well. She had found some hints of her mother's identity in the mystic realm, and knew that she was from the second domain. The only way she could find out more about her was to go there. Just as she was about to speak her mind, a sudden pain bloomed in her chest. The pain seared through her bones and brain, and was so painful it felt as though her lungs and heart were being ripped apart. It was so bad that her vision turned black, and she almost fell off the black bone throne. Fortunately, it only lasted for a little while. She swayed for a moment, but stabilized herself almost immediately. Chapter 2074. The Disintegrating Seal 1. The 8 tribe leaders had not noticed anything wrong with Yi Qingtang, and were still encouraging her to return to the second domain. It was Ming Wang beside her who noticed her pale face. Brows furrowing, he looked at the chattering 8 tribe leaders and said coldly, "The Holy Lord has her own plans. This issue with the ancient Yu clan is more important right now. If you have nothing else to say, please leave. The 8 tribe leaders were speechless. This little rascal. How dare he make use of the Holy Lord's affections towards him? But they knew they couldn't be too hasty, or risk Yi Qingtang's dissatisfaction. So they left. Ming Wang waited for all of them to leave before turning to her. Holy Lord, you should take a rest first. His expression was unchanged by the worry in his eyes, revealing his true thoughts. The pain in her chest was constant and unbearable, but in order not to let Ming Wang know, she could only keep a straight face and drag herself back into her room. Ming Wang frowned as he looked at her retreating figure. What was wrong with Ayao? Why had he sensed a dangerous aura on her just now? Yi Qingtang forced herself back into her room before collapsing on her bed. The pain was getting more apparent and cold sweat broke out on her forehead. The little white tiger, which was sleeping soundly at the side, was startled awake by her sudden movements. It rubbed its half-open eyes with its paws, and was about to mutter something when it noticed her collapsed on the bed, pale and covered in a cold sweat as she clutched her chest. The little white tiger jumped up in an instant. Damn, what's happening to you? She had been fine when she left just now, so what was happening? It was still puzzling over her condition when it sensed an aura that it hadn't sensed for a long time on her. This was... The little white tiger jumped onto her and looked at her chest with its eyes narrowed. The divine phoenix seal was weakening. Damn it! There had been so many things happening recently that it had completely forgotten that there was such a dangerous thing on her. Yi Qingtang could feel the pain seeping into her heart and bones as her consciousness gradually faded. Mother! Mother! Do you not want me anymore? Mother! A soft, familiar voice filled her ears as she faded in and out of consciousness. She soon completely blacked out. The little white tiger narrowed its eyes as it looked at the dangerous aura surrounding her. The door suddenly opened just as he was worrying about what to do. Ling Yan rushed straight to her. As he saw the black fog surrounding her body, his gentle eyes turned sharp. He suddenly opened his karmic natal chart, summoned a strange force, and forced it into her body. The black fog around her dissipated in an instant, and the pain on her face cleared. You! The little white tiger looked at him strangely. The divine phoenix seal won't be able to suppress it much longer. He looked at the sleeping Yi Qingtang and lifted his hand to wipe the sweat off her face. The little azure dragon's eyes were complicated as it looked at the situation unfolding in front of him. Ling Yan, how many lives did you think you have to do something like this? Chapter 2075. The Disintegrating Seal, 2. When Yi Qingtang finally came out of her stupor, 3 days had already passed. She felt a huge weight on her chest when she woke up and forced herself to look up. A fluffy, white thing was lying squarely on her chest. Yi Qingtang was speechless. The little white tiger was in deep slumber when a force pushed it to the ground. Damn it, who did that? The little white tiger said fiercely rolled on the ground. It lifted its eyes and saw an expressionless Yi Qingtang staring at it. The little white tiger jumped onto the bed and exclaimed, "You're finally awake." She nodded. I was afraid I was going to die in my sleep if I didn't wake up. The little white tiger froze, asking, "What happened? Why would you die?" I thought I was going to be crushed to death. Yi Qingtang twisted her lips and looked at the little white tiger's round body. Did you gain weight recently? A fierce glare was directed towards her. What are you saying? Who did you say gained weight? Don't spout rubbish. The little white tiger sucked in its stomach as it spoke, but its soft tummy still bulged out. No, that wasn't it. It hadn't gained weight, it had just grown up. The little white tiger was extremely dejected. It came from the race of white tigers, and was the benchmark for all other fiend celestial beasts. He was supposed to have balanced bones and honed muscles. However, Yi Qingtang rarely brought it out in the Temple of Shadows, and since it was the Holy Lord of Shadows' precious pet, everything it asked for was given to it. The bored little white tiger could only eat its loneliness away. It had also been moving around less, so gradually, could it be blamed that flab had started collecting around its stomach? Yi Qingtang looked at the little white tiger and stuck out her hand to poke its soft tummy. Stop it, you beast. The little white tiger shouted as it clutched its stomach. "You damned woman! How dare you touch my stomach? What else would I do?" She looked at how round the little white tiger had gotten, and confirmed that it had indeed gained weight. "Fiend celestial beasts don't get fat," the little white tiger argued as it turned pale. Yi Qingtang felt that it was just deceiving itself. "How long have I been out for?" she asked as she got out of bed. 3 days. "You really know how to sleep," the little white tiger replied. 3 days, what happened to me?" She frowned. Many things had happened extremely quickly that day, and her memories were a mess. "Who knows?" the little white tiger said as it moved its gaze away. He kept silent about all that had happened when she was asleep, and didn't mention Ling Yan and the heart of the heavenly Tao. Yi Qingtang could sense that there was something more it wasn't saying. Even though the pain had been unbearable, and it had already been 3 days, she still remembered what happened that day. She touched her chest subconsciously as a strange feeling came from it. She had felt this before, but in her previous life, she had suffered pain so terrible that it almost killed her when the heart of the heavenly Tao had broken out of her. A frown crossed her face. She had almost forgotten that the heart of the heavenly Tao didn't belong to her after the divine phoenix had sealed it. But now, the heart of the heavenly Tao was showing signs of leaking. This was not a good sign for her. Chapter 2076. Powerful Enemies 1. Before she could figure out whether there was anything wrong with the divine phoenix seal, someone knocked on her door. "Holy Lord, Mi has something to discuss with you. He's waiting in the main hall." Shuefu's voice drifted in from the outside. Mi was looking for her? Her heart jolted. It was probably something important if it made me so worried. Putting on her clothes, she picked up the plump, little white tiger and carried it outside with her. In the main hall, the Crimson League alien race people who were with me were already standing inside. They all glanced at her as she entered. The 8 tribe leaders and Ming Wang were inside as well. "Mo Yao, I have something to discuss with you." Miss Surreal's voice was heavy. From his tone, she could tell that something bad had happened when she was sleeping. "What happened?" she asked. Mi didn't speak up immediately, and handed over a letter with the Crimson League's seal on it to her. She opened it and read the contents. A strange look flashed past her eyes. The Heavenly Wolf Sect? Yi Qingtang looked at the contents of the letter and read out the familiar yet foreign words. The Heavenly Wolf Sect is one of the powers of the second domain. Even though they're not on the same mainland as us, they're nothing to scoff at. "This letter was delivered to me today," Mi slowly said. The Heavenly Wolf Sect and the Crimson League were on par with each other. In the past, they did not interact with each other, but got into a fight due to some conflict thousands of years ago. They fought many small and big battles, but in the end, it was still hard to determine the winner. The Crimson League had already sent people to infiltrate the Heavenly Wolf Sect and gather information. Even though the spies had been unable to enter the inner circle, they had still been able to find out some information. A few days prior, the Heavenly Wolf Sect had sent a small troop to the first domain. "Are you worried that the Heavenly Wolf Sect might go to the central mainland?" Yi Qingtang asked. Mi nodded. "It's not impossible. We had to be so secretive about coming to the first domain this time, because letting the other powers know about the spirit of chaos would only make them flock here. The Crimson League had to obtain the spirit of chaos, but the Heavenly Wolf Sect had nothing to do with the first domain. It was extremely suspicious that they had suddenly sent people to the first domain at such a sensitive time." "Your worries might be true," she said. Mi froze. It had only been a nagging suspicion in his mind without any evidence. But Yi Qingtang's words seemed to suggest that she knew something more. "What do you mean?" she said. "When we were attacking the ancient Yu clan's underground world, I was informed that the city lord wasn't present. From what I know, he has not returned, and seems to have vanished from the central mainland." She had many theories with regards to his disappearance, but now it seemed that it had coincided nicely with the actions of the Heavenly Wolf Sect. Chapter 2077. Powerful Enemies 2. What exactly in the first domain could have caught their attention to this extent? Yi Qingtang couldn't think of anything else other than little Yu Yin and the spirit of chaos. The ancient Yu clan had suffered huge losses this time. Knowing them, they wouldn't take this lying down. It seemed like they were going to use the same tactic as Yi Qingtang and use the spirit of chaos to goad the Heavenly Wolf sect into action. Just as she was talking to me, a Temple of Shadows guard ran up to report to her in a panic. Holy Lord of Shadows, about 100 meters away, there is a huge troop of soldiers and horses rushing towards us. We also saw several ancient Yu clan elders within the troops. Yi Qingtang and me exchanged glances the moment they heard the news. Could you be right? I hope that I'm wrong. The faces of the 8 tribe leaders darkened. They were all from the second domain, so of course, they knew of the Heavenly Wolf sect. The Crimson League was formed by the top powers of the second domain, but the Heavenly Wolf sect consisted of all the villains. The Heavenly Wolf sect was made up of countless murderers and people with no regard for the rules, and they were all extremely powerful. The strongest, fiercest, and most powerful of them all was the leader. It was not an exaggeration to say that their reputation in the second domain was terrifying. This was a group that was difficult to deal with. That shouldn't be possible, right? What does the ancient Yu clan have to offer the Heavenly Wolf sect? The demon tribe leader said. You're right. There's no way the Heavenly Wolf sect would bother with the power from the first domain, the goblin tribe leader said. Ming Wang looked at the debating 8 tribe leaders and said, there's no way the Heavenly Wolf sect would have any interest in the ancient Yu clan, but they would definitely be interested in the spirit of chaos. And they were going up against the Crimson League, which they were already in conflict with. Knowing their character, they would probably take action. It was not a hopeful situation. Could you see who the ancient Yu clan was with? She asked the soldier. The soldier replied, they seem to be wearing black armor, and their helmet is in the shape of a wolf head. This was enough for all of them to surmise. It's the Heavenly Wolf sect. His voice was heavy. Baiji, gather our men immediately, he ordered. Since the ancient Yu clan was the one who had invited the Heavenly Wolf sect over, it meant that they already knew the size of their army. The Crimson League had not brought many people over to the Crimson League this time, and would suffer huge losses if the Heavenly Wolf sect had come prepared. Baiji didn't dare waste any more time, and went to prepare for the battle immediately. If the Heavenly Wolf sect were to attack us today, they won't rest until we're all dead. I didn't bring enough men this time. If we confront them, it will cause huge losses on our side. Even me, who was usually very proud of himself, couldn't express any words of confidence. Since they were old rivals, he knew their way of fighting well. Mo Yao, I'll leave you to take care of the manpower in the Temple of Shadows, Mi said before leaving. With the collapse of the ancient Yu clan's underground world, their power had disappeared and the remaining members had all scattered. As such, the ancient clans could finally be at peace. With the huge victory, they had all returned to their original homes, ready to make a comeback. Chapter 2078. Powerful Enemies 3. The only people left in the Temple of Shadows were the Undead clan. Even the Jiang family had been sent back to their homes by Yi Qingtang. Likewise, the North Star Demon Lord had left with the Demon clan as well. But a powerful enemy had suddenly appeared in front of them. After she had sent the 8 tribe leaders and Ming Wang away, she walked over to Ling Yan's room, kicked down his door, and dragged him out. She was clearly a head shorter than him, but looked fierce as she dragged him away. Miss Yi. He was amused as she dragged him away, and the Azure Dragon hurried after them. Did she already notice? Is Ling Yan going to die? The Azure Dragon thought meanly. Yi Qingtang didn't say a single word as she dragged Ling Yan into Ning Luo's room. Ning Luo was taking care of little Yu Yin in the room, and looked at her in puzzlement as she entered. Seeing that everyone was there, she spoke up. You must all leave the Temple of Shadows right away. The further you go, the better. What? Ning Luo asked in shock. Wasting no time, Yi Qingtang helped Ning Luo pack the medications for little Yu Yin as she said. The ancient Yu clan has roped in powers from the second domain to fight us, and they're heading toward the Temple of Shadows right now. They're here for the spirit of chaos. Ning Luo, I'm leaving little Yu Yin and little Luo Shui in your care. I trust that you won't let them fall into anyone else's hands." As she said this, she stuffed the space ring which was full of items into his hands. Ning Luo looked at her strangely and said, "What do you mean? You're going to stay here?" With a smile she only said, "I'm the Holy Lord of Shadows. How could I leave?" If she left, she wouldn't even have to worry about the Heavenly Wolf sect. The Crimson League would kill her first. Furthermore, the entire Temple of Shadows would be dragged into the mess. Ning Luo's eyes were complicated, but in the end, he decided to leave with little Yu Yin and little Luo Shui. Before he left he said, "Yi Qingtang." She looked at him. "You shouldn't die here." With that he turned and left quickly. Seeing that Ning Luo had left with little Yu Yin and little Luo Shui, her lips curled up into a smile. Everyone in the First Mainland could be revived as long as little Yu Yin was safe. She had settled one problem. With that, she turned to Ling Yin who was behind her and said, "You've heard everything that I've said. I don't need to say any more, do I?" Ling Yin smiled slightly and said, "Miss Yi wants me to leave." "So why aren't you leaving?" she said with a light laugh. Ling Yin had helped her too many times. She couldn't let him die here. As soon as the battle started, Ling Yin wouldn't be able to protect himself with his capabilities. "I guess I have no choice but to respectfully obey," he said with a smile, immediately agreeing to her request without any hesitation. Yi Qingtang was taken aback. This damned rascal. Couldn't he at least pretend a little? Go now, or you won't be able to leave once the battle starts. They were running out of time. The Heavenly Wolf sect was about to reach them, and she left as soon as she heard his answer. Ling Yin smiled at her back and brought the Azure Dragon back to their room. After packing his possessions, he prepared to leave the Temple of Shadows. Chapter 2079, Heavenly Wolf Sect 1. Little Azure Dragon looked at Ling Yin, who wasn't hesitant to leave, with a complicated expression. "You're just going to leave like that? What else can I do?" Ling Yin smiled. The Heavenly Wolf sect came prepared. "I don't think the Crimson League will be able to handle them. Yi Qingtang will face danger. Aren't you afraid that she's going to die here?" Little Azure Dragon couldn't figure out what was going on in Ling Yan's head. Ling Yan didn't respond. He merely lifted his head to look at the sky. Little Azure Dragon was perplexed. It just couldn't understand what Ling Yan was planning. He was already ready to die on her behalf, but now, what was Ling Yan plotting? 5,000 meters away from the Temple of Shadows, the troops rushed over, and even the ground vibrated. The Crimson League and Temple of Shadows joined forces to form troops that gathered outside the entrance of the Temple of Shadows. The expressions on everyone's faces were somber. Various clans had learned that the ancient Yu clan was going to attack the second domain. The clans finally experienced some peace after the destruction of the ancient Yu clan's underground world and returned to where they belong. However, today they came together to face the last battle for the central mainland. If the Temple of Shadows were to lose, the clans would open the doors to revenge from the ancient Yu clan. This battle was a battle for their imminent survival. The sound of war drums rang. Everyone lifted their heads, only to see countless soldiers charge over, almost drowning them. Suddenly they heard a roar from above. Lifting their heads, they noticed numerous flying mounts that soared in the sky. Yi Qingtang looked at the Heavenly Wolf sect and the ancient Yu clan's army, and her heart sank, while she tried to look at me with her peripheral vision. Though she couldn't see his face, she could sense from his cold aura that he probably felt the same way as her. Is that Lu Jiao, one of the 12 sect custodians from the Heavenly Wolf sect? Bai Ji's eyes narrowed when she saw a handsome man riding on the back of a huge demonic beast among the Heavenly Wolf sect's troops. Shui Mao is here too. The Crimson League had bad ties with the Heavenly Wolf sect for a long time already. They naturally knew who were the powerful ones in the Heavenly Wolf sect. When the Crimson League saw the Heavenly Wolf sect send their elites over, they couldn't help but feel even moodier. As one of the 12 sect custodians, his powers were akin to that of the Deputy League Chief. That meant that he was a strong opponent, even in the second domain. Although me and Bai Ji were considerably powerful among the Crimson League, They weren't as powerful as the Deputy League Chief. The Heavenly Wolf sect has planned things thoroughly. It seems like they want to get rid of us, with just one attempt. Baiji grit her teeth angrily before she continued. I've sent someone to relay the news to the second domain. With the 2 sect custodians leading them, we shouldn't fight them yet. Why don't we wait for the reinforcements to arrive before starting the battle? Mi shook his head. There won't be any reinforcements. What? Baiji was stunned. Yi Qingtang remained calm. She had the exact thoughts. The Heavenly Wolf sect obviously won't leave any chances for us. They might have already taken action and arranged something in the second domain to interrupt our plans. If not, why wouldn't the Crimson League send any help even though they should have learned of the news earlier than us? Chapter 2080. Heavenly Wolf Sect. 2. Yi Qingtang knew from the start that the reinforcements from the Crimson League had been interrupted by the Heavenly Wolf sect. They wouldn't be able to come and help them out in the first domain. Baiji's expression darkened. Me, what are the chances of winning over the 2 sect custodians? Baiji could only pin her hopes on me, who was the most powerful out of them. Me replied. If I were to just pick one of them to battle, there's only a 10% chance of winning. Ms. reply made the sticky situation even worse. Mo Yao, you handle the 2 sect custodians with Ming Di. Ms. gaze landed on Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang was speechless. What did he just say? Me hadn't noticed anything wrong with Yi Qingtang, yet so he continued. You have been hiding your capabilities from others. Even now, I still haven't figured out how powerful you are. I lost when I challenged you 10,000 years ago. Now we can only count on you and Ming Di as our last hope. She remained silent. She hadn't expected the Holy Lord of Shadows to be that powerful, as she had witnessed Ms. powers before. To think that even me wasn't the Holy Lord of Shadows match. Hearing from me, the 2 sect custodians were capable of destroying him, and Baiji, her powers. It was clear that her holy venerate powers weren't enough. She wanted to defeat them too, but she wasn't capable of doing so. A deep sense of despair filled her. It was really difficult to pose as the Holy Lord of Shadows. Not just anyone was capable of doing it. As me and Yi Qingtang were discussing their strategy, the ancient Yu clan and the Heavenly Wolf sect's army were almost upon them. The 2 people leading in front were the 2 sect custodians, Lu Jiao and Shui Mao. I was thinking who the Crimson League would send. It turns out it's me and Baiji. A woman with an ethereal appearance approached. She scanned the Crimson League's army with her eyes, and when she noticed me and Baiji, the corners of her lips hitched up. Elder Yuan stood beside Lu Jiao and Shui Mao. When he heard Shui Mao's words, his heart almost skipped a beat. He had seen me and Baiji's capabilities with his own eyes. Even the elite youths that were trained by the ancient Yu clan weren't able to hold in for long when they fought against them. They were that powerful, but they sounded pathetic when Shui Mao talked about them. Elder Yuan couldn't help but turn to look at the clan master. A smile was on the clan master's face. The Heavenly Wolf sect's powers are comparable to the Crimson League in the second domain. Moreover, the Heavenly Wolf sect has expanded over the years and is capable of defeating the Crimson League, Clan Master said. While the Clan Master was talking, Lu Jiao suddenly lifted his arm. A glimmer of light appeared on his palm, transforming into a sharp sword, and he waved it with light movements. The sword aura started acting on the Crimson League's army. Boom! The ground was split into 2 halves, and a huge crack appeared in the middle. It only took one moment, and the various clans were flabbergasted by the sword's alarming power. Even then Lu Jiao had a poker face on. He merely looked at me, who stood at the front of the army, and spoke with a calm voice. Hand over the fragments of the spirit of chaos, and I can consider leaving your corpse intact in one whole piece. Chapter 2081. Heavenly Wolf Sect 3. The deathly aura surrounding me was intensifying. The move was merely a warning, but Lu Jiao clearly demonstrated his great powers. Even me wouldn't be confident when faced with Lu Zio's one move. Lu Jiao was indeed someone to be reckoned with. No wonder the various clans from the second domain gathered together to fight him. He overpowered everyone from the Crimson League. Mo Yao, Mi suddenly called out. Return to the Temple of Shadows now and take the fragments of the Spirit of Chaos, as well as the vessel with you. Mi took a deep breath. He previously thought that Mo Yao and Ming Di could at least try to fight the sect custodians. Now Mi planned to just give up and stop struggling. With Lu Zio's capabilities, there was no way they could overpower him. Even if victory was nowhere near, they would never hand over the fragments of the Spirit of Chaos to the Heavenly Wolf sect. The Spirit of Chaos must return to the Crimson League. Yi Qingtang could sense Mi's intentions, and she lowered her eyes. The exact moment Mi finished speaking, Shui Mao made a move. Unlike the patient Lu Jiao, she leaped and huge waves formed underneath her body. A huge water dragon appeared just like that. Jiao, don't be so impatient. Since we're already here in the first domain, why don't we have some fun first? A devious smile appeared on Shui Mao's face. Not only do I want the Spirit of Chaos, but I also want their lives too. The moment she finished her sentence, the water dragon started charging towards the Crimson League's army. When the water dragon charged over, vines as thick as human arms suddenly started bursting out of the ground and formed a huge protective net in front of the Crimson League's army. Boom! The water dragon collided into the huge protective net. Though the protective barrier appeared to be as tough as steel, it instantly shattered upon the impact of the water dragon. PSS. The moment the protective net shattered, Baiji suffered a counter effect. She spat out a mouthful of blood. Mi acted quickly, lifting his arm to create gusts of black wind to entrap the water dragon. Even so, the water dragon moved about quickly without being affected, and it formed counter effects on him, causing havoc in his breath. The other Crimson League members quickly moved in to help, and barely managed to put the water dragon under control. The satisfaction Shui Mao felt was apparent when she saw Crimson League mobilizing almost everyone just to handle a water dragon. The other ancient clans from the central mainland witnessed that too, and they were all flabbergasted. So that was the real capabilities of the top powers from the second domain. They recalled that when the supposed strong powers from the second domain first came to the first domain, they just had to join forces to fight them and not suffer huge injuries. Now they finally realized that those supposed strong powers from the second domain weren't even that powerful. When faced with real powers, they were just like ants that could be easily crushed. They didn't need anyone more. Just the two sect custodians from the Heavenly Wolf sect were enough to wipe them all out. Everyone was consumed in fear. The ancient Yu clan was in high spirits. Once they handed over the Spirit of Chaos to the Heavenly Wolf sect, they could secretly take little Yu Yun away. The Crimson League and Holy Lord of Shadows would be defeated and suffer a miserable loss. From then on, the central mainland would belong to them. The ancient Yu clan could eventually use little Yu Yun's spiritual abode to cultivate and attack the second domain when the time came. Then it would only be a matter of time before they became the most powerful clan. Chapter 2082. Instant Kill 1. Roar! All of a sudden, a loud dragon's roar ripped the sky apart. Mi was too exhausted to even deal with it, but he suddenly spotted a huge figure that flew to attack the terrifying water dragon. Stunned, Mi quickly lifted his eyes to look up. All he could see was Yi Qingtang riding on Ming Di's back. The water dragon started turning into water droplets that only glimmered under the sunlight. Yi Qingtang was certain that if the Crimson League were to lose, the entire Temple of Shadows and Central Mainland would be taken away. Little Yu Yin was once taken away, right in front of her. She was never going to let history repeat itself. Her foster father, her master. She had to do anything and everything to make them come back to this world. As Yi Qingtang scanned the Temple of Shadows undead clan, and had a somewhat gentle gaze. Though she was forced into this role, it was undeniable that she kind of liked this damned undead clan. Shui Mao hadn't expected someone from the Crimson League to outdo the water dragon. She narrowed her eyes and tried to make another move, but was interrupted by Lu Jiao. Mo Yao, it's been long. Lu Jiao lifted his head, looking at Yi Qingtang, who rode on the demon dragon's back. Tears trickled down Yi Qingtang's cheeks. She looked at Lu Xiao from above without any expression on her face. He was one of the 12 sect custodians, and it turned out he was acquainted with the Holy Lord of Shadows? Yi Qingtang had no idea how many more secrets the Holy Lord of Shadows kept. Lu Xiao clearly knew that it was the Holy Lord of Shadows, so he didn't allow Shui Mao to attack yet. I heard that you came to the first domain long ago. I didn't expect us to be able to meet again. Great, we can have some closure today. Lu Xiao had a sinister look on his face. Yi Qingtang was shocked. Darn. So it turned out he had some bad blood with the Holy Lord of Shadows. Lu Xiao suddenly transformed into a beam of light, flying up the sky to charge towards Yi Qingtang. Smoke and fire erupted into the skies as Ming Di instantly breathed hot air in his direction. Lu Xiao paused in the sky, holding a sharp sword to fight Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang was glad that she had Ming Di with her. When she was still thinking about it, Shui Mao flew up into the sky too. Let me deal with the demon dragon. Shui Mao smiled as she prepared her moves. I've got to give it to you for breaking down my water dragon earlier. But this time, I don't think you can last that long. Ming Di's eyes were filled with a murderous aura as he charged towards Shui Mao. Of course, Ming Di assumed the Holy Lord of Shadows wouldn't need his help. Yi Qingtang was speechless. Calm down. Now there's no one to interrupt us. Lu Xiao glared at Yi Qingtang with a murderous look. Chill. Yi Qingtang looked at the murderous Lu Xiao and was filled with despair. Ayao. Ming Gu saw the dangerous situation and flew up. Ming Wang also followed right behind. Right as they were flying up, a few youths from the ancient Yu clan followed and interrupted them. Kill them, the ancient Yu clan's clan master ordered with a murderous look on his face. Once he gave the orders, almost everyone from the ancient Yu clan moved. The groans from the Heavenly Wolf Sect's war beasts were never-ending. The horn signals rang, and the Heavenly Wolf Sect's army charged forward. It only took a moment, and the Heavenly Wolf Sect's army was in a chaotic skirmish to the death with the Crimson League's army. Chapter 2083. Instant Kill 2. The entire Central Mainland army, that was mainly made up of the Temple of Shadows, also charged towards the battlefield. It only took a few minutes before the entire battlefield was completely chaotic, and the strong acrid scent of blood permeated the air. Corpses were laying everywhere, with blood spilled as far as the eye could see. Death was common on battlefields. The Heavenly Wolf sect had far exceeded the Crimson League in terms of the number of soldiers, and had an overwhelming advantage. Bloody corpses were everywhere. Although the battle had just begun, and the various ancient clans already had many casualties. However, no one cowered. Everyone was giving it their all to eliminate the enemies. In the sky, Lu Xiao suddenly raised his sword and struck at Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang wasn't powerful enough to handle Lu Xiao. She could barely even catch his shadow. Right when Yi Qingtang thought that it was about time to die, a beam of holy light appeared from above, and she was surrounded by the light. Lu Xiao struck his sword over the holy light, and he flew away from the impact. What in the world had happened? The holy light passed through Yi Qingtang and struck the battlefield, instantly splitting the battlefield. Me and the others present were all stunned. They heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing the holy light separate the Heavenly Wolf sect and the ancient Yu clan from them. The holy light was extremely powerful. The moment it landed on the ground, it instantly burned all the living creatures that came into contact with it into ashes. No matter the Heavenly Wolf sect or the Crimson League, none of them had a chance at escaping. They were burned into ashes, becoming one with the ground. What terrifying power! Everyone was shocked, and they subconsciously looked over to the holy light. A six-winged fire phoenix appeared before their eyes in the sky. The fire phoenix glimmered, and it was akin to a sun, floating above the sky. The six-winged fire phoenix. Is that a heavenly beast? Baiji was stunned, with shock written all over her face. They could somehow see two figures, riding on the back of the six-winged fire phoenix. They were both dressed in white robes, and were calm and collected, looking at the battlefield from above. They seemed to not be affected by anyone at all. Lu Xiao stared at the six-winged fire phoenix in astonishment. She realized that when the six-winged fire phoenix appeared, the beasts in the battlefield whimpered when they saw it. It was as though they saw something terrorizing. They crouched over, lowering their heads, and didn't dare to make a single move. The flying beasts also stopped moving. They landed on the ground, and didn't dare to fly back up into the sky. All that was left behind in the sky was the glimmering six-winged fire phoenix. The beasts were all paying their respects. Yi Qingtang was surrounded by the holy light, and she felt like she was controlled by a certain force. She couldn't move even the slightest, and lifted her eyes to look over. The two figures riding on the six-winged fire phoenix's back appeared before her eyes. One of them was the man who suddenly challenged her at the Temple of Shadows that day. What was going on? Yi Qingtang was confused. When Mi saw that familiar face, his heart raced. Lu Xiao looked at the six-winged fire phoenix in front of him with narrowed eyes. He would have managed to kill Yi Qingtang earlier, if they hadn't come into the picture. Chapter 2084. Instant Kill 3. With their appearance, Yi Qingtang was saved. Were they sent by the Crimson League? Lu Xiao and Shui Mao instantly exchanged glances. They acted at the same time. Two powerful beams of light struck in the six-winged fire phoenix's direction. Right before it struck the two figures riding on the six-winged fire phoenix's back, a middle-aged man in his 40s looked over. With a wave of an arm, the two beams of light just vanished into nothing. Lu Xiao and Shui Mao's faces darkened. What a hindrance, the man said. He looked at Lu Xiao and Shui Mao with displeasure, as though they were merely ashes that had landed on his sleeves. The next moment, he lifted his arm, and a glimmering beam of golden light came out from his palm. It shot towards Lu Xiao and Shui Mao. Within seconds, the light penetrated through Lu Xiao and Shui Mao. They didn't even have a chance to retaliate, and were burned into ashes in an instant. Even then the light didn't disappear. After shooting Lu Xiao and Shui Mao, it landed on the Heavenly Wolf sect and Ancient Yu clan's army, shining on them all. Every living creature that was shown by the light started turning into ashes. Everyone was stupefied. The Crimson League and members of the Central Mainland looked at the burnt piece of land in disbelief. Just a while ago, the Heavenly Wolf sect and Ancient Yu clan's army stood there. But now, all that was left behind was ashes. What kind of insanity is this? An ancient clan elder was almost breathless. There were hundreds of thousands of living creatures, and this man just made one move to burn all of them into ashes. That made everyone's hair stand on end. If the light just slightly shone over, wouldn't they also die? Thump! Mi went down on his knees and bowed his head respectfully at the two figures, riding on the six-winged fire phoenix, in front of everyone. We welcome the supremacy. The entire Crimson League went down on their knees and bowed. The others from the Central Mainland didn't know who they were. But after witnessing their prowess, they knelt too. Yi Qingtang was completely taken aback. She was only certain that they didn't belong to the Crimson League. Judging from Mi's attitude, they certainly were much more powerful than the Crimson League. Yi Qingtang was still guessing their identities when the holy light started forcing her towards the six-winged fire phoenix. Elder, that's her. It was the young man that challenged her that day. He pointed Yi Qingtang out to the elder after he saw her. The middle-aged man's gaze riveted on Yi Qingtang's face. Once he saw her face, he couldn't help but furrow his brows, seemingly trying to recall something. May I know? Yi Qingtang hadn't finished speaking. The holy light that surrounded her suddenly became gold chains that held her captive. Yi Qingtang was speechless. What on earth was going on? Chapter 2085. Temple of Paragon, 1. Before the people from the Temple of Shadows had time to process what had just happened, the six-winged fire phoenix burst through the clouds and disappeared. Ayao! Minggu watched as Yi Qingtang disappeared right in front of his eyes, and took off after them. But only after a few meters, Ming Di suddenly spread open his wings, and stopped him as well as Ming Wang, who had chased after him. Ming Di! Ming Wang frowned at him. I don't care if you die, but Mo Yao is going to be upset if you die in front of her. Ming Di sprayed fire from his mouth as he pinned Ming Wang, and Ming Wang onto the ground with his claws. Ming Di, let go of me, Ming Gu said agitatedly. Ming Di flapped his wings, but showed no signs of letting them go. You can't even escape from me. And you want to chase after them? Do you want to die? Ming Di said coldly. Don't say I didn't warn you. Even I am no match for the six-winged fire phoenix, let alone the two people on its back. Ming Gu and Ming Di were stunned. They had the impression all along that Ming Di was wildly arrogant, killing as he pleased in the second domain, with the only person he feared being the Holy Lord of Shadows. But he had just admitted that he was no match for the six-winged fire phoenix. Ming Di is right. They're not opponents you can take on. We don't know yet whether it's a good or bad thing that Mo Yao has been taken, but you will both die if you chase after them, Mi said as he got up. Who are they? Ming Wang's eyes were helpless as he lay pinned to the ground. Mi lifted his head slightly to look into the distance. The Temple of Paragon. The four words flowed out of Mi's mouth, making Ming Wang freeze in an instant. Ming Di sensed the change in him, and quickly let him go. However, Ming Gu had no idea who they were. Once he was free, he quickly grabbed Ming Wang and flew after Yi Qingtang. But this time, it was Ming Wang who grabbed his wrist and held him back. Brother! Ming Gu looked at Ming Wang with a strange expression. Ming Wang didn't say anything, only holding his brother's wrist tightly and not letting him leave. Are you sure? Ming Wang looked at me, before his searching eyes landed on Ming Di. Ming Di spoke. I don't recognize the two people on its back, but I remember the six-winged fire phoenix. I fought 3 days and 3 nights with it, and came out defeated in the end. After that, I heard that it had moved to the Temple of Paragon. It seems like Mi is telling the truth. There was no way Ming Di would have talked about his defeat if he wasn't afraid that Ming Wang was going to die if he went after them. All those years ago, Ming Di had been wreaking havoc all over the place, not holding any regard for any other creatures. But he had accidentally disturbed the six-winged fire phoenix's rest. He had made it sound nicer, saying that they had battled for 3 days and 3 nights. But in reality, he was the one who had been hunted by the six-winged fire phoenix for 3 days and 3 nights, and almost died under the six-winged fire phoenix's fire. The Temple of Paragon? What's that? Brother, why aren't you going after Ayao? Ming Gu tried to get free, but it was useless. Ming Wang's expression was extremely grim. The Temple of Paragon is the top power in the second domain. Any single one of them can destroy the entire first domain. Ming Wang's voice was helpless. Chapter 2086. Temple of Paragon 2. Ming Wang had never imagined that they would cross paths with the Temple of Paragon one day. Even though the Crimson League was a huge power in the second domain, the power of the Temple of Paragon was beyond them, and they were an entity that normal people couldn't even dream of touching. The Crimson League probably wouldn't even be able to reach their front gate, even if they all attacked together. For the first time in his life, Ming Wang was experiencing a huge gap in his abilities. Ming Gu was stunned. But Yao! The Temple of Paragon has never come into contact with Mo Yao before. The mainland that the Temple of Paragon is at is different from the mainland that we are at as well. So maybe taking Mo Yao away is nothing bad after all, Mi said. But he had no idea why they had taken her. He was just glad that he knew someone from the Temple of Paragon. That person had for some reason appeared in the first domain, and Mi had met him coincidentally when they were fighting the ancient Yu clan. But he had vanished suddenly after that, which made me extremely puzzled. However, given that he was from the Temple of Paragon, it meant he wasn't someone Mi could question easily. Ming Gu wanted to speak, but Ming Wang pushed him forward. In front of them, the air was filled with ashes and the smell of burnt flesh. As Ming Gu looked at everything around him, he felt as though someone was squeezing his throat. The people from the Temple of Paragon had reduced the Heavenly Wolf sect and ancient Yu clan troops to ash with just a lift of their hand. What terrifying power! Seeing that Ming Gu was still in shock, Ming Wang sighed deeply and looked at me. The central mainland accepted us back previously, but now that everything in the central mainland has settled down, are we still allowed to return to the second domain? Mi looked at Ming Wang. Even though Yi Qingtang had been taken away right in front of him, Ming Di was still here, which meant that they still qualified to return to the Crimson League. He nodded slightly. Ming Wang's eyes filled with determination. As long as they returned to the second domain, they might be able to see Yi Qingtang. On the mountain, a slim figure stood between the bamboo plants. He was looking at the scorched earth, as well as the Crimson League and Temple of Shadows members, discussing at the foot of the mountain. The Azure Dragon stood to the side looking at Ling Yan, who was the one standing among the bamboo plants. Ling Yan hadn't left like Yi Qingtang thought he did. He had brought the Azure Dragon to this mountain and personally witnessed the entire battle, which meant he had seen with his own two eyes Yi Qingtang being taken away by the six-winged fire phoenix. After seeing all of this, he turned and walked back towards the Temple of Shadows. At this moment, the Crimson League troops and the Temple of Shadows forces were still on the battlefield, and the Temple of Shadows was empty. He walked through the quiet main hall towards the underground path, and walked to the Hall of Gloom, lighting the fire on the wall. Once again the almost illusionary pagoda appeared in front of him. The Azure Dragon looked at him strangely, but before he could speak, Ling Yan climbed onto the pagoda, opened the altar where the Spirit of Chaos was placed and put the fragments and the container inside. So you've had your eye on the Spirit of Chaos this entire time, Ling Yan. The Azure Dragon looked at Ling Yan with a complicated expression as he climbed up the pagoda. Chapter 2087. Temple of Paragon 3. The little Azure Dragon finally understood why Ling Yan was doing all of this. It wasn't a coincidence that Ling Yan had appeared in the first mainland. Even the meeting with Yi Qingtang was planned. He had dragged her into his plan ever since the first time they had met. You asked her to impersonate the Holy Lord of Shadows, because you already predicted that the ancient Yu clan would use the spiritual abode to try and take over the central mainland. And in that case, the Temple of Shadows would become everyone else's last hope. You were using her to collect the Spirit of Chaos fragments? The little Azure Dragon put together all the events that had occurred to date, regardless of whether it was impersonating the Holy Lord of Shadows or seeking help from the Crimson League. Weren't these all suggestions that Ling Yan had given her? The little Azure Dragon suddenly thought of something. No wonder. You didn't find it strange at all when she was taken away by the six-winged fire phoenix. Ling Yan, did you already know that this was going to happen? What exactly are you planning? Ling Yan looked at the little Azure Dragon coming to a realization, and his lips curved into a slight smile. The Azure Dragon clan is known for their intelligence. In that case, why don't you try figuring out what I'm up to? The little Azure Dragon's mouth twitched. It was only up against him that their clan would take such a blow in their intelligence. Even if you did all of this for the Spirit of Chaos fragments, there's only half of them here. The others? The little Azure Dragon was about to remind Ling Yan of this, when Ling Yan's calm expression made him realize something. He must know where the remaining fragments were hidden. Ling Yan, were you helping Yi Qingtang all this time solely for your own goals? Or were you really trying to help her? The little Azure Dragon asked. Ling Yan smiled. Take a guess. Ling Yan's smile was mysterious, but the little Azure Dragon's mind was working wildly. It was easy to say that he was just making use of her. But hadn't he transferred her death tribulation onto himself? The death tribulation was already on his karmic natal chart. Despite all his intelligence, it wouldn't stop it from entering his body. I really don't understand you. It was the first time the little Azure Dragon completely couldn't understand Ling Yan's thoughts. He had planned for so long just to obtain the Spirit of Chaos. What use did the Spirit of Chaos have to him? Since you don't understand, keep on watching. Someday you'll get it, Ling Yan said lightly as he walked out of the Hall of Gloom. As he passed by the main hall, the little white tiger suddenly flashed past him as it flew into the main hall. Yi Qingtang had been afraid that the little white tiger would get involved, so she had locked it in her room. It had only managed to escape after knocking down the room door. Ling Yan looked at the little white tiger's back, and his smile got wider. Without anyone knowing, Ling Yan brought the little Azure Dragon into the Temple of Shadows. At that very same time, Yi Qingtang was being brought out of the central mainland by the six-winged fire phoenix. She could feel a headache coming on as she looked at her own situation. They really look alike. The indifferent middle-aged man's eyes landed on Yi Qingtang's face. His eyes were completely void of emotion, and it felt like she was looking at a dead person. Even then he was closing inspecting her features. Chapter 2088. Clone 1. Yi Qingtang wanted to speak but realized that she couldn't move a single muscle. The gold chain around her was completely restraining her entire body. Although she was conscious, she couldn't move or speak, and felt just like a statue. "You're already tired?" The middle-aged man retracted his gaze and looked at the boy. The boy said respectfully, "Yes. I tested her strength when I found her, and it is inferior." The inferior Yi Qingtang was lost for words. Of course, no one cared about her opinion. The boy continued, "But I didn't know how to handle it, so I could only ask you for help." The middle-aged man nodded slightly. "Elder, is she really the one who separated from the Holy Lord?" The boy looked at Yi Qingtang as he asked the middle-aged man. The elder nodded and said, "You're right. Many people look similar to each other in this world, but none that look exactly the same. No matter how alike people may appear to each other, their figure, features, and bone structure will all have some slight differences. They wouldn't be exactly the same, even if they tried to alter themselves. They could always change their appearance, but not their bone structure." The elder had already taken a look at her bones when she was bound by the golden chain, and had confirmed that it was exactly the same. For someone to be identical to this degree, they could only be the person themselves or a clone. "We've been looking for this clone all these years. Who would have thought that she had hidden in the first domain? No wonder there were no signs of her when we were searching the second domain. How clever of her." Yi Qingtang listened to their conversation silently as it surprised her. "Holy Lord, what did he mean by a clone? I heard that this clone appeared in the mainland where the Crimson League was over 10,000 years ago. After that, she gathered a group of undead clan members and built the Temple of Shadows. But she suddenly shifted everything to the first mainland after the Temple of Shadows was built." The boy repeated everything he had heard from me. As Yi Qingtang listened in on their conversation, she started picking up on some hints. It seemed that these two people had come from a strong power in the second domain. They were powerful enough to suppress the Crimson League and the Heavenly Wolf sect easily. And the one leading this power was the Holy Lord they were speaking of. A long time ago, their Holy Lord of Shadows had an accident which created a clone. The clone had escaped amid all the chaos to another mainland and created the Temple of Shadows in secret. Did that mean that the Holy Lord of Shadows was a clone? She was shocked by this news. The mighty Holy Lord of Shadows in the first domain was a mere clone? How terrifying was the main body then? She hadn't understood why the Holy Lord of Shadows had wanted to leave the second domain if she was so powerful that she would be at the top even in the second domain. But now she understood. So it turned out the Holy Lord of Shadows was running away. No wonder. The boy had given her such a request the first time they met. He had probably already been suspicious of her identity. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.